Sarika told us what she knew, and not all of it was predictable. We didn't kill your friends. Evelyn made the first tentative foray, frowning down at her chocolate eclair as if it might turn into a live eel, too impatient to wait for Sarika's explanations. On the other side of the table, Sarika was busy forcing her hand and arm muscles into limp obedience to hold her matching chocolate treat, chewing slowly and jerkily through her second mouthful. Between them lay the white floral box from Plaisir Coupable, still with a generous helping of leftover eclairs beneath the clear plastic window, utterly out of place next to Evelyn's Scrimshawed Thighbone and the stack of magical tomes. "They're good, Evie, they really are," I said. "Do try yours, please." "Yeah, I'll have that if you're not gonna eat it," Rain said, leaning on the back of my chair, winking at Evelyn. I made a muffled noise around a similar mouthful of pastry, chocolate, and cream, but I was too indecisive, couldn't figure out if I was telling her off for not waiting another 30 seconds while Sarika ate, or thanking her for the illusion of politeness. The other two ex-cultists, Evelyn carried right on without taking a bite. We didn't even see them, and if they are dead I doubt they're in the castle dimension. "Mr. Joking C, are we really calling him that?" She broke off for a second. "Arsehole," Rain suggested brightly, sucking a stray blob of cream off her fingers. "Zombie man," said Nicole. "Revenant would be technically accurate," Evelyn grumbled. I swallowed my mouthful. "Those are all very, very bad. Can't we just call him king?" Evelyn wrinkled her nose. "I dislike the implied symbolism of that. Names have power, Heather." Merlin, Preem intoned from behind Evelyn, comfortably returned to her maid uniform once more. "Absolutely not," Evelyn snapped over her shoulder. "You stow that thought. I never want to hear that again." My eclair paused on the way back to my mouth, a mirror of my heart. Was Merlin real? "Hey, no, please." Nicole tilted her head at me, then shot a desperately pleading look at Evelyn over the kitchen table, face turning a touch pale under the electric lights. "There's some things I am better off not knowing. Please don't say yes, come on, no, that's so stupid, that dash." "Oh thank God," Nicole breathed. I blushed a hot rose color, a little embarrassed at my stupid question. "I think King Arthur totally existed," Rain said. "Not because of any evidence but just 'cause it would be cooler than if he didn't. Ontological argument, you know." Evelyn rolled her eyes so hard it must have caused her pain. Even Sarika managed a jerky frown at this nonsense. From behind us, lurking beyond the doorway to the front room, came a muffled giggle. Lozzie peered around the door frame and winked when she caught my eye, licking chocolate off her fingertips. "I do like the idea that Camelot could have been real," I trailed off in further embarrassment. "Mr. Joking it is then," Evelyn drawled, then turned back to Sarika. "Yes, we found him dead, but he got up again. I would wager my left eye that he's still very much walking around. Unless Zheng has caught him. That's what the demon is doing, hunting." Sarika stared back at Evelyn. Blinking her squinty, mismatched eyelids, a twitching tic forced her head a few degrees to the left every 3 seconds. She showed only the slow visible pleasure from the taste of chocolate and cream, her strangely white-streaked hair thin and dry under the kitchen's electric lights. Beyond the windows, the sun had finished setting, and darkness reigned. "So if you have a way to contact him," Evelyn continued, "other than the number he called you from, I strongly suggest you do so. If Zheng catches him, I suspect the menu will be considerably more meaty than eclairs and tea." Ugh. That bite of eclair went down my throat like ashen mucus. I'd made my peace with Zheng's Homnivorism, but I didn't want to think about it while eating. The eclairs really were very good, I had to admit. Not £30 good, an amount of money which could feed me well for over a week. A bit of pastry and chocolate icing filled with cream was not worth that money, no matter how delicate and crumbly the pastry, how smooth and dark the chocolate, how rich and soft the cream. At least we had almost a dozen left in the box, even after everyone had claimed one for themselves. C2 for Rain C, and the smell of the confectionery had drawn Lozzie tiptoe hop tripping down the stairs. Lozzie stayed in the front room for now, well out of Sarika's sight, and had assured me in hurried whispers that Tenny would not follow her down. Preem was the only person not to eat an eclair, apparently content with the 2 strawberries Evelyn had fed her. The doll demon had returned without incident, almost right on time, while I was still chewing on the perspective Nicole had presented to me under the suffocated sunset. As soon as she was through the front door, Evelyn had been bustling about, questioning her about possible tales, about if anybody was following her, if anything had happened. Preem had presented us with a carrier bag in which lay the eclair box, and that was all. Who would set a trap in a pastry shop anyway? We weren't living in an episode of Midsomer Murders. No, our reality was much worse. At first I was incapable of eating. I'd sat there like Evelyn, staring at the eclair on a little plate handed to me by Preem. The enormity of the situation was too much, the other side of the coin that Nicole had just revealed to me, breaking bread C or pastry C with ex-middle management of a mass murder machine. The others treated it as normal. Nothing much to think about. Nicole was likely aided by the numbing effects of police work, but Evelyn and Rain did so because they'd long ago internalized this stuff. In the end I justified it to myself with simple practicality. We weren't going to kill Sarika, and we couldn't punish her in the way she really deserved, so why not? Besides, the chocolate did smell very good. After that previous bite had been ruined by memories of Zheng wolfing down human flesh, I took a moment as Evelyn opened her mouth again, expecting her to deploy some equally vile image. Instead, I almost choked on her gall. If he leaves the city, she said, and stays out, then we'll recall Zheng. Sarika's jaw paused in the process of chewing, eyes boring back into Evelyn. She resumed eating with exaggerated slowness, swallowed, and smacked her lips. Liar, Sarika slurred. Zheng's free. She cast a venomous glance my way. Can't she control that? Yes, that's correct, I said, with a tiny exasperated sigh at Evelyn. Nobody sends Zheng anywhere anymore. She does what she wants, for good or for ill. It's out of our hands. Liar, Sarika croaked at Evelyn again. Evelyn's lips twisted into a nasty little smile. Oh well, it was worth a shot. Yes, quite, Evelyn confirmed, cold and clinical. He didn't seem to be suffering the same affliction as the rest of your cult ended up with. My theory is he wasn't really committed, not really under Alexander Lilburne's power. I doubt he's truly shielded or immune to the thing, simply that he wasn't Lilburne's to give. Evelyn sucked on her teeth for a moment, considering Sarika with quiet thought. Alright, I'll go first. You lack context, and without that context you may skip details that would be useful to me. I am not being nice, understand? She didn't wait for a nod, but instead turned her eyes to me. Heather, please allow me to do this, don't add anything I don't ask you for. This is very important. And then with a side eye at Rain, and you keep your mouth shut. Thank God Twill's not here. Now, listen carefully, here's what happened. Slow and steady, Evelyn explained the events of Saturday night. My incredible surprise at her offer of speaking first quickly turned to cynical comprehension. She edited the story down to practical details alone, cut out vast gulfs of information: the location of our gateway, the presence of Lozzie or Tenny, the changed nature of the world out in the fog around the castle, the wards she'd placed, the precise wording of the bizarre Welsh incantation around the circle, the specific taunts the mage had thrown at herself and Zheng. Her words sounded like a recital. She'd planned in advance exactly what to say. Sarika slowly munched her way through a second chocolate eclair, and it was hard to tell how much attention she was paying. When Evelyn told her about the other corpse, the pulverized one, she paused, but then frowned in confusion when Evelyn revealed that Mr. Joking had claimed this was the mortal remains of some sort of handler, sent by Edward Lilburne. Ed? Sarika blinked, quietly horrified behind her twitching eyes. They didn't tell me that. Was no fifth person. Yes, I think I believe you, Evelyn replied. If Edward was backing this little group, he wouldn't want to let on to you, in case you decided not to help. She did tell Sarika about how the Welsh mage switched between 3 distinct personalities, and how he'd avoided blows, lunges, and even bullets without really looking, and all about the spell he'd cast at me and Zheng, though she didn't attempt to describe the esoteric shape he'd made with his hands. But Evelyn also focused on details that I would have thought unimportant: an estimation of the time between Zheng breaching the circle and the resurrection of the corpse, the mage's reluctance to reveal any kind of real name, the cadence of his Welsh accent, the specific color of the light from the spell he'd cast, his insistence on asking permission to leave over and over again. She told Sarika about the lack of evidence in Mr. Joking's ratty bedsit, and how the hair's preem had ripped from his scalp had vanished without our notice, not to be found on the workshop floor. Sarika sat and listened attentively, except for the way she shook and shivered at random intervals. And your name was in that mobile phone, she finished. The other 2 names that Evelyn huffed to herself and clicked her fingers. Rain. Rain made a series of ridiculous noises behind her closed lips. The tension of the last few minutes broke inside me like an overfilled water balloon, and I burst out laughing, spluttering into the elbow of my hoodie, embarrassed. Evelyn stared at the pair of us like we'd gone mad. Rain did it again. You did say dash, I spluttered. You did tell her to keep her mouth shut, Evie. Rain did this big theatrical gape and pretended surprise. My gratitude, oh, most terrible and merciful sorceress, you have unsealed my lips and freed me from your mystical bindings. How may I serve, oh, sparkly-fingered magical one? Evelyn gave Rain a look to wither cast iron. I don't know how you lot get anything done around here, Nicole muttered. Bikeman and January, Rain relented with a wink for Evelyn. Those were the other 2 names on the call log, both the same morning as you, Sarika. Quite, Evelyn hissed, and meant I am dying to hit you with my walking stick. We did try calling them, with proper precautions, but nobody was picking up. Sarika squinted in slow thought. Bill Cook. He'd been a cyclist, when young. Maybe. Maybe Bike Man. Stupid nickname. Right, Rain said, nodding slowly. What about January? Sarika shrugged, so Rain went on. Makes sense though. Calls his comrades, then calls Sarika. Wonder who they're bait for, if he left them in the phone. Shoo, Evelyn hissed at Rain with a tight frown, a finger to her lips, then turned back to Sarika. Now it's your turn. You tell us everything. Sarika, I said, softly, then hiccuped, hating myself for this. She didn't deign to look at me. Sarika, please, if you choose not to talk to Evelyn, then dash, I swallowed. Then you and I can talk alone. Evelyn shrugged. What else am I supposed to do? He's a mage, loose in my city. He was in my home. What would you do? He leaves, or I remove him. Slowly, eyes lowering, Sarika's smile withered on the vine. With a weak grip and trembly fingers, she nudged her mobile phone from where she'd left it when the Eclairs had arrived, and scooted it across the table toward Evelyn. She nodded at it and coughed, look at calls. All still there, Sarika mumbled, lips thick. He called me. And night before they went. You talk about old times? Rain asked. Sarika stared at Evelyn, waiting for some sign that never came. He said hello. I screamed. Through the phone. Dented wall. Rain raised her eyebrows. Evelyn raised her gaze from the phone in silent question. Why do you think? Sarika slurred, angry and bitter, shaking more than before. Her head twitched to the left every few seconds, gripped with that distinctive tick again. Because he was a survivor, I said. Cultists still dedicated to our big ocular pal in the sky, Rain said. How many people left before the ritual? Even Evelyn wasn't cruel enough to voice the obvious barb. Well, you failed at that, didn't you? Though I saw it in her eyes and heard it in her sigh as we waited for Sarika to come back, to calm down, to focus. Eventually she opened her eyes again and went on, exhausted and so heavy-lidded I thought she might slip into a nap. Evelyn leaned forward, face a mask of lead. You had a book of Alexander Lilburne's magical workings, and you did not give it up to us. And where is this notebook now? Evelyn asked, lips pursed tight because the answer was going to be a bad one. Right here, actually, I think, Nicole said, with a frown at Sarika. She reached into her long coat and pulled out a black leather-bound notebook. She gave me this when I picked her up, for safekeeping. It? Sarika nodded. Evelyn stared at the notebook in Nicole's hand with naked surprise, then snatched it from her, frowning at the thing like she couldn't believe her luck. She went to flick it open, fingers fumbling, but Preem reached down and pinched the pages shut at one corner. Preem. Evelyn spluttered. What are dash? Evie, she has a point, I said, nodding at Preem. Look. Preem was staring at Sarika in blank challenge. Empty white eyes bored into the ex-mage, but Sarika didn't shrink. Fair's fair, demon, Sarika croaked. Not a trap. And no point. Evelyn caught herself, going both cold and red in the face at the same time. She shoved the black notebook into Preem's hands and managed to jerk out a, check that. Yes. Preem raised the notebook to her face and literally flicked the pages past her eyes at top speed, then snapped it shut and presented it to Evelyn again, who took it with wordless embarrassment, still mortified at her near mistake. Evie, I said gently, Evie, it's what friends are for. You can't be infallible, not all the time. Evelyn wouldn't look at me. She flipped the notebook open and stared at it with hot eyes, flicking back and forth at random. "'Sti good stuff," Sarika slurred. The stuff that he kept only in his head. Trusted me. The black notebook did not look the part, it could have come from the stationery shelves at Tesco. I expected a mage's darkest secrets to be bound in human leather, or glowing, or written on stone. Then again, I could hardly criticize. I kept the secrets of reality rewriting mathematics in spiral-bound flip pads from the university's academic supplies shop. Right. Yes. Okay, this is real, I'll give you that. Evelyn's voice quivered with excitement. But how on earth did you keep them from taking it? There's no way they would have left you with this. You're a cripple, defenseless, they could have stolen it without a fight. Alright, Evelyn almost purred, subconsciously stroking the notebook's cover. And what was their grand escape plan? Sarika blinked slowly. New way to communicate with the big, she waved a hand in a twitching circle. Sky children. Are round the castle. Said they'd rather be enthralled to them, instead of the it. That's a lie. Lozzie whirled into the kitchen doorway, elfin face pulled into a serious little frown, hands on her hips beneath her pastel poncho, eyes blazing. Sarika turned with urgent difficulty to look over her shoulder, as Lozzie ignored my frantic shooing motions for her to return to hiding. Loz, Sarika croaked, blinking in shock. That's a lie. Lozzie repeated. Also you suck. You're Loz. It must be a lie, Lozzie continued, looking at the rest of us now. It's stupid and it's a lie. That's not how the big squiddy kitties work. They couldn't do that, not like that, you'd have to know how to sing and silly nasty people don't know how to. It's a lie. Are you, Loz dash? Lozzie stuck her tongue out at Sarika, with far more grumpy venom than she deployed against Nicole. It's a lie and you suck. But thank you for the eclair. Healthy. Is it? Are they looking after dash? Sarika choked the words out, shaking with emotional overload. Of course it's a lie, Evelyn drawled, the droll and dross of her voice steamrollering over the growing confrontation. But I doubt it's Sarika's lie. Edward Lilburne had his own agenda, and from what Mr. Joking said, he and the others were unaware of the truth of that. Question is, Rain added lightly, what was Eddie Boy hoping to get out of all this? Lozzie span on her heel, pastel poncho twirling out in a wave of pink and blue, face screwed up as she ran back into the front room. I got up from my chair and went after her, remains of my Eclair forgotten. Sarika stared at Lozzie's wake, limp and hollow as I passed. All right, here's my theory, Evelyn was saying. Theory for everything, Rain said, rubbing her hands together. The 3 ex-cultists found Edward Lilburne, or perhaps the other way around, and he offered them a way to escape the big ocular friend, Evelyn sighed. But actually he had his own agenda, not fully shared with them. The Welsh mage was an infiltrator with his own entirely separate aims as well, and I suspect Dash. I slipped out of the kitchen and into the front room as Evelyn warmed to her subject, hugging my hoodie around myself, expecting to find Lozzie curled up against the wall, possibly crying. That look on her face, the anger and frustration, made perfect sense considering the relationship Sarika had with Lozzie's late brother. I'd never unpicked that knot, not with everything else my poor little Lozzie had been through. Perhaps it was time, perhaps it wouldn't keep any longer. Lozzie? Shh. She put a finger to her lips and giggled. I boggled at her, crossed the few paces between us, and for some reason I still don't understand, I touched her head to check she was really there. Heather, she whispered in confusion. But we have no idea what Edward was actually after, Evelyn's voice floated from the kitchen. Access to the castle, perhaps. Access to the thing under the castle, which I've been assured is pointless without a certain other Lilburne family member. Access to the gate formulas, no, he could have easily taken them from Sarika, so that makes no sense. The death of the handler he sent doesn't necessarily mean he failed, but he dash. I thought you were crying, I whispered to Lozzie. I thought you were hurting. Lozzie muffled another giggle. Hurts her more this way. I couldn't believe my ears. Lozzie did this little dip with her eyes and shoulders, a sulky teenager moment of exasperated explanation. I know it's bad, but she deserves it. Lozzie whispered. She let my brother lead her, she did everything he asked. She's responsible. Yes, well but Lozzie, he was abusive. Manipulative, he dash. She could have said no. Lozzie scrunched up a frown as she hissed. I always said no. Evelyn was still going, her voice a spiked drone back in the kitchen. This doesn't give us any idea where he might be, but if we can find these 2 January and Bike Man, stupid bloody names, maybe they could give us something to go on. I do not want this man in Sherrowford, I do not want him lurking at our backs, I do not want Dash. I have to go back, I whispered to Lozzie, gently touched my forehead to hers in a gesture so spontaneous and natural I didn't have time to think about it, and then hurried back into the kitchen. Rain caught my eye with a silent question as I returned, but I didn't answer. I'd been thrown off, almost missed my moment, and now my stomach churned with tight anticipation. It was now or never. Evelyn was in full flow. And if we're lucky, very lucky, Jean will get to him before I have to bother. But if not, it's time to start Dash. Ahem, I said, then actually cleared my throat, feeling a bit silly. Evelyn stopped and raised an eyebrow at me. I wrung my hands together inside my hoodie's big front pocket, hiccuped, and forced myself to step around the table, closer to Evelyn and Rain. Nicole sat still and casual in her chair, another biscuit in her hand. I think she knew what I was up to. Sarika stared at me, bored and exhausted. Yes, Heather. Evelyn said when I took too long to find my courage. Yes, well, I managed, wetting my lips with a dry tongue. Zhang might return with the mage's scalp tomorrow morning, and then we'll all have to find ways to live with that. Let the steaming, beautiful demon perform the act, take the decision out of our hands, eat his flesh and remove the problem. It would be so easy, and part of me prayed for it too. But I'm going to present a radical notion. I had to stop to hiccup. And it's going to cause an argument, and I'd like to apologize in advance. And you're probably going to look at me like I'd lost my marbles, and I'm going to ask you not to do that, please. Anything, Rain murmured, and she meant it. Oh dear, Evelyn sighed. Why do I get the feeling this is going to a very stupid place? How about, I said, we let the mage go? Evelyn paused, blinked, then turned acid. Well done, Heather, you have managed to surprise me. It's stupider than I thought. Hey, Evie, Rain said softly. Hear her out, yeah. I made myself stand up straight, voice shaking more than I wanted. Frankly, I don't even know where to start with this. He might not even be in Sherrowford anymore, he might have left. How would we go about finding him, anyway? Zheng hasn't been home for 2 days. If she can't find him, what hope do we have, if he really doesn't want to be found? She's a hunter, a real one, we're not. There are ways, Evelyn said, like throwing a knife at me. I flinched and had to look away from her glare. Then what are those ways, Evie? Please, tell me. Are you going to have Preem wander around Sherrowford until she bumps into him? Silence. Evelyn's turned to avert her gaze, and I knew I'd hit not too far off the mark. I kept going, pressed the advantage, had to get through to her. And how long would that take? I said. We could search for this man for weeks and weeks and turn up nothing, because I'm not even certain that what he was up to had anything to do with us. I think he wasn't really interested in us. Evie, on Saturday night, we had him cornered, and despite everything, in the end he left without causing any of us permanent harm. He left, and he hasn't been back, and I don't think he's going to come back. He de-escalated. Because he's a mage, I said automatically. Because he was probably just as worried about us as we are about him. And here my throat stuck, my reasons ran out, and a shard of truth, barbed but incomplete, forced itself out through my lips. And because I don't want us to commit murder in cold blood. The fact we're even considering that is mad. I don't want you to have to do that, Evie. Heather, Evelyn said my name in the way one might speak to a very stupid child, but then she must have noticed, in the corner of her eye, how still and calm and unsurprised Nicole looked. She glanced at the detective, then back at me, and then got really angry. She went cold. Oh, I see, the police officer put this idea in your head, did she? Nicole raised her hands in surrender, but stayed silent. Evie, no, she didn't put it in my head, She exploded on the last few words, whiplashed from cold to volcanic eruption in a shout so loud I was surprised it didn't bring Tenny crashing down the stairs in panic to see what had happened. I flinched hard, hands to my chest in shock. Nicole winced, Sarika jerked in surprise, clutching at her crutches. Evelyn went red in the face, staring at me, then at Nicole, nostrils flaring, losing control of herself. Evie, Rain was saying her name, to no avail. Coming back from the dead dash, Evelyn swallowed down a fraction of her rage, clenching and unclenching her good hand in front of her as if grasping for words, talking more to the tabletop than us. I cannot emphasize how unbelievably difficult that is, the sheer power that man must have. It is almost impossible, and the price of even the most well-documented methods is, beyond dash. She looked like she wanted to spit. He is a monster, he must be. My mother spent decades, before I was even conceived, searching for some route toward immortality, and look how that worked out. She finally looked up, at me, and behind the anger lurked a writhing, hidden darkness of horror and disgust. And I don't even know what that man was. Evie, I'm not suggesting he's worthy of mercy, not because dash. We're not leaving him alive in this city, we're not. He will come back for my books and my head and anything else he can take, like every other mage would. Maybe tomorrow, maybe 10 years from now. But I will get him first. I will get him first. Felicity didn't try to murder you, I blurted out. Neither has Kimberly. Is she going to turn out like that eventually? That's not the same, Heather, you know that. Actually Evie, I don't know that, no. Can you justify this? Nicole finally piped up, far too calm. Evelyn turned to her, ready to bite her head off. Have you heard a single word I'd said, you overpaid thug? This man undoubtedly deserves it, and he's dangerous, in ways you can't possibly even understand, you dash. And there it was, the point I'd been trying to avoid all evening. I closed my eyes and bit my tongue to stop myself sobbing with relief. I let myself feel the truth, and I felt like rubbish. Evelyn was going off at Nicole again, some rambling aggression about how an ounce of prevention was better than a pound of cure, none of which I disagreed with. Rain interjected too, that she would expend any effort to protect her home and her friends from monsters, which I also liked. Preem said self-defense out loud at one point, I silently agreed. I opened my eyes and spoke into the maelstrom, Evie. I had to repeat myself 3 times before she paid attention, which was fair enough because I wasn't saying it very loudly. I didn't have the strength for that. But eventually she turned to me, other voices dying away, Rain touching my shoulder gently because she must have seen the look on my face at last. Evelyn opened her mouth to spit bile, but my expression stopped her too. That surprised me. I wasn't angry. I will do it, I said, quivering, with a lump in my throat. If he comes back, if we see him in the street, if he appears in the back garden with a shovel, if he so much as visits the university library to borrow a book, I will do it myself. Evie, I will do it myself. If he glances at one of us, I will obliterate him, because I believe you. I will superheat the air and spin atoms so hard they fly apart, and I will turn him to a pile of ash, because next time I will know to do so the moment I see him. I promise you, right here, right now, I will do it myself. I will do it. I will be the executioner, because I can do that, because I was once out there in the cold dark where killing is surviving and I can do it again. You don't have to be an executioner, Evie. You don't have to do this. Heather, Rain said, oh so softly. It's not your responsibility. Rain. My voice went tight. I'm pretty sure he could dodge a bullet even if the gun was in his mouth. Evelyn was frowning at me, as if she couldn't follow. Why? We call off the hunt for him, I said. We're not doing it. We're not spending weeks on it. We're safe here, in this house, aren't we? With each other, if we stick together and look after each other. But we let this go. We let this go. If we see him, I'll do it. But we let this go and dash. Heather, Evelyn hissed. It's not enough to be safe dash. And we go to Carcosa. No more delays. Evelyn stopped, mouth open. She hadn't expected that. I'm begging you, Evie. Every day that goes by, there is less and less of my sister to save. If we're not in immediate danger, please. Help me. And there was the truth. I would take that risk, I would put us all in danger, and I would commit murder in cold blood to pay for that risk. I would take that upon my head, for Maisie. Evelyn turned a most fascinating shade of white. She tried to bore holes through the back of my eye sockets, but I was already shaking a little with the adrenaline and fear of confrontation, and the cold realization that I would gladly commit murder for my twin. Rain said something inane to Evelyn, like, have another biscuit, or, think it over, but I didn't really hear her, and neither did Evelyn, who looked down at the table and groped for her walking stick with numb fingers. Preem pressed it into Evelyn's hand, and Evelyn got up. She shoved Alexander's notebook into Preem's grip in return, then crossed stiffly over to the cupboards and fumbled out one of her little pill bottles. She slammed back 2 white tablets without any water. Evie, hey, go easy, Rain said. Easy, Preem agreed, sing-song. Evelyn ignored them, stared at the doorway to the front room, then at me. We need to talk. Alone, she squeezed out. Come with me. And then she stomped out of the kitchen. Hey, Evie Dash, Rain said, but I was already following. And you stay there, Preem, Evelyn snapped back over her shoulder as the doll demon began to follow. I slunk out of the kitchen in Evelyn's sweeping wake. She'd gone so cold I couldn't predict her anger, but I was prepared to take anything she threw at me. Lozzie raised her eyebrows at us as we passed through the front room, and she pulled a huge comedy grimace that I really needed. I managed a shaky smile in return, heart racing against the inside of my ribcage. Evelyn hesitated as if unsure where to go, then stomped into the disused sitting room. I followed. "Stand there," she snapped at a point behind her, and I stood there. She shut the door with a bang, closing us inside the unlit room together. Several heartbeats passed, loud in my own ears, during which I assumed we were going to have this argument in the dark, but then she slapped the light switch. Anemic bulbs struggled to life, illuminating her kinked spine and back, which was rising and falling with sharp little breaths beneath her neat cream jumper. I hugged myself through my hoodie, hiccuped loudly, and prepared to get very shouted at. When Evelyn turned around to face me, she was crying. "All right," she said in a small voice. "All right. We'll drop any effort to hunt the mage. Evie. Your dash." "I appreciate that, Evie," I said when she paused, feeling tears prickle at the corners of my own eyes. Adrenaline and fear had transmogrified to sympathetic release. A kind of magic that required no blood circles or chanted Latin. "I really, really do." "It's okay, you don't have to dash." "Shut up. Truth is, Heather, I love you." When she saw the flicker on my face, she quickly added, voice thick with pain, "And not like Rain loves you, damn it, you idiot. You make a joke out of this right now and I will belt you with my walking stick so hard it'll knock you back into your abyss." "I wouldn't make a joke of your feelings, I'm sorry." "I love you too, Evie, you're my best friend." She sniffed, hard, and scrubbed at her eyes with her sleeve, cursing softly at herself. I couldn't bear it, Evie crying, couldn't bear her feeling this bad. I put a hand out to take her arm, but she gestured with her stick as if to knock me away. "You've saved my life, twice," she said. I owe you me, twice over, and I can't ever repay that." "You don't have to. Don't try." "So yes, for you, for your sister who I've never even bloody met, okay? Okay, we drop this." She stared right into me, crying silently, struggling to keep from breaking down. I sniffed too. This time she didn't ward me off when I gently took her hand, the one wrapped tight around the head of her walking stick. I squeezed and smiled for her. "Thank you, Evie. Thank you. And I sincerely hope you do get to meet Maisie, soon. I hope she likes you too." Evelyn finally broke, scrunching up her eyes and smothering a wet sob. I almost moved in to hold her, but she waved me off again with a strangled grunt. She only needed the one sob of release, and then almost seemed to clear, breathing hard. She didn't stop crying, but her face unclenched inside, the effort of will falling away. She let go. "God, Heather, I'm just so sick of living in fear." "I know," I said, and meant it. "I know. Me too. Why don't you, then?" Evelyn gave me a heavy-lidded look through lingering tears. "What else good am I? A cripple and a baby." "Evie, that's not true." I almost yelled at her, caught in the moment, blinking back tears. "Don't beat yourself up like that, that's dash. And because it's an addiction," she hissed. "Once you're in, there's no getting out. Knowledge, understanding, insight. I could burn all my books and notes and I'd still never stop thinking about it. Easier to stop breathing. Too much my mother's daughter." "Don't say that," I said sharply. "You're not. Is he? I'm really sorry to ask again, I do believe you, but is he really that dangerous?" "I don't know," she whispered, biting her lower lip in frustration. "I don't know. I admit it, I don't know. I want to believe people can be good, that mages are still people. I want to let it go, but I wanted to believe that of my mother too." I wanted it so much. Wanted to believe she actually loved me, kept on wanting to believe it right up till the moment we killed her. But it was never true. She convinced herself too, taught me as if I was going to grow up as her protege, but when it came down to the wire I was just so much fodder, a vessel to be emptied out. But I got her first, Evelyn grit her teeth. I got her first. I got her first because I murdered the sentimental lie before she did. Evelyn sagged a little after that outburst, put her face in her free hand. Evie. I rubbed her arm. I won't. Evie, I promise. She let go another heavy sigh, and roused herself a little. At least the tears had thinned out in her red-rimmed eyes. And I can't say this to Rain, she grumbled with a cynical half-attempted smile. Because she'll grin and promise to protect me, and that doesn't help. What if you have a whole family protecting you? I blurted it out without knowing what I meant, but the moment I said it, I knew it was true. Evelyn frowned. What, Preem, and Twill, and dash, Evelyn huffed, a spark of good humor back in her eyes. Twill can protect me from getting my head caved in during a bar fight, fine, but she can't protect me one whit from all of this. I can, I said, and blushed instantly bright red, hiccuped like an explosion, but I held Evelyn's frowning look. I really don't like to say this sort of thing, but I know I'm more powerful than you, Evie. I can do anything with brain math, if I want it enough, if I'm willing to endure the pain. And I meant that promise earlier. If we see that mage again, and I do mean, see, I don't mean he has to attack us first, I will kill him. I will do it in cold blood. Heather, you know you can't. You're such a softie, you have to build up to it, you dash. I'm not. Not anymore. Not what came back from the abyss. I spoke too fast, tripping over my words. You're my pack, Evie. You and Rain and everyone else, and I will kill to protect you. I don't understand how I've done it, because it's probably never been done before, and it's abominable, I'm an abomination, but it's like the abyssal thing I was and the ape I am have joined up bits of their thinking. And then, so I didn't break down with horror at what twisted and curled inside my chest where once a human soul had lain uncorrupted. I'll do it, in broad daylight. I will pop him like a balloon, and it'll get on the national news. Man spontaneously explodes in the middle of a Sherrowford Street. Drug suspected. I giggled, hiccuped, too close to the edge. I can't let you take that responsibility, Evelyn sniffed. Heather, I'm not, you've already done so much. Evie, your mother was a monster, and I know you can't forgive your father. I understand, you don't have a family, you don't feel safe. But I will protect you whether you want me to or not, because the instincts I've brought back from the abyss have decided that you're family to me. Tears threatened in Evelyn's eyes again. Heather dash. I won't ask you to call me sister, because that would be really, really weird, I know. But if you did, hypothetically, it would be okay. No, I smiled back. Oh bugger this, I need a hug. Here. She shook my hand off and opened her arms. Arms around my middle back, not shoulders, please. We all but fell together. Evelyn clung on tight, small and misshapen and hot and shaking. I was very careful where I put my hands. Squeeze harder, she murmured past my shoulder. Just keep it low enough, yes. Thank you. Eventually she stopped shaking, stopped crying. We held on for another half-minute, and then slowly, reluctantly disentangled. She didn't seem embarrassed, but took a long moment to wipe her eyes and inhale very slowly. I had to scrub my eyes and clear my nose as well. So, what are you going to do about Zheng? She asked, voice a little hoarse, but much more herself again. Evelyn looked calmer than I'd seen her in weeks. Wait for her to come home, I suppose, and then talk to her. I don't know if she'll give up the hunt too, it's different with her, different reasons. We don't need her for Carcosa, strictly speaking, but I really want her at my side. Good luck. I touched Evelyn's arm again. She patted my hand. "Let's get Sarika out of here," she said with a tired sigh. "I think we've gotten all we're going to get from her, and after this, I need to go watch some mindless anime about girls drinking tea or something. Care to join me?" "I'm not quite done with her, yet," I said slowly, pulling myself back together for one more task. "I need to talk to her. Alone, I think. We have unfinished business." "Heather?" Evelyn frowned at me and my heart cringed. "She's nothing, she's not dangerous anymore, don't dash." "No. I'm not going to hurt her." "I wouldn't, there's no point in punishment for punishment's sake," I said quickly. "No. She's going to help too, whether she likes it or not." "Help with what? What else is there?" I smiled, resigned. "Rescuing Maisie. Do you feel any remorse?" Sarika stared at me across the kitchen tabletop as if she hadn't heard my question, dull and slack. Quite the anticlimax. I'd spent the last 5 minutes strapping shoddy supports to an emotional construct of weary courage and battered determination, but my siege engine availed me nothing against an empty fortress. She blinked slowly, one eye out of sync with the other, lid sticking shut a second too long. Perhaps she was just exhausted. "Sarika?" I said. "Heard you, first time," she croaked. We were alone in the kitchen, beneath the flat yellow electric light, surrounded by the debris of empty plates and pastry crumbs. The box of Eclairs lay between us, a perversely inappropriate centerpiece. Behind Sarika, the door to the front room stood sensibly shut. An off-white barrier with scuffed corners and thin, old paint, the wood grain showed through beneath. This was the first I'd seen that door closed the whole time I'd lived here. Long ago it had been wedged open against the hard tiles of the kitchen floor, probably decades back, and had since settled with age like the rest of the house. Rain had given it a hard shove, hard even by Rain's standards, and dislodged the door with a teeth-grating scrape of wood on stone. The hinges had creaked like the gate to Dracula's castle in a Hammer horror movie, as Rain had pulled it shut behind her. With one last nodding look of confidence from me, an "I know you can do this" sort of look, Rain had shut us in. Rain's faith shamed me. With no idea what I was planning, she believed in me regardless. Evelyn alone knew what I was up to, and her in only the most general terms. She and I had walked back into the kitchen hand in hand, though Evelyn had quickly let go and glowered at Rain's raised eyebrows. Nicole hadn't wanted to leave Sarika and I alone together, not after the look of frozen fear behind Sarika's eyes when I'd announced my request for a private audience with our guest. The detective had tried to find a compromise. Could she stay with us, out of the way, and she'll be professional and upright and very quiet? No, thank you, because I didn't want her to witness this. What about Preem, on strict orders not to interfere? But Preem was hardly a neutral third party when it came to the woman who had attempted to orchestrate Evelyn's death. In the end I had to explicitly assure Nicole that I wasn't out for revenge. Saying so made me feel sick, small, and cold. Everyone treated me as if I was some intimidating monster, from Sarika's defiant glare to Rain's confident nod, but in truth I felt uncomfortable as I shivered inside my hoodie. Crying with Evelyn had imparted a curious kind of purgative strength to my mind, but it was a fragile strength, soft and nurturing, not for the threat of violence behind closed doors. So now it was just me, and Sarika. Small noises crept through the house around us, the evening creak of settling beams, the almost imperceptible scuttle of rats in the foundations, the metal clink as Sarika adjusted her crutches. A distant murmur of voices crept from behind the walls, the others, waiting in the old sitting room, or perhaps they'd gone upstairs to frighten Nicole by introducing her to Tenny. More likely, Rain had her ear pressed to the kitchen door right now, with Lozzie leaning over her shoulder. I sat in Evelyn's seat, unhappy with the stack of magical tomes at my elbow. At least Evelyn had taken away the Scrimshawed Thighbone. "Take your time to think, if that's what you need," I told Sarika's dull stare. "I will accept whatever answer you give, I do need you to answer." Her lips twitched and twisted into a broken sneer as she dug deep into her reserves of spite. One last barbed shot. Life isn't a Saturday morning cartoon. Not gonna fall at your feet and beg forgiveness. I sighed, and didn't bother to hide it. Should have expected that. The other way would have been easier. I know what I did, she forced out, low and bitter. My pulse throbbed hard in my throat and I had to clench my hands together inside my hoodie's front pocket. This was an ugly and dangerous labyrinth to explore, especially when I didn't really know what I was looking for in Sarika's answers. I did not wish to ask these things, or think about any of this. All I wanted right now was to go watch silly anime with Evelyn on one side and Lozzie on the other, and stop thinking for the rest of the evening. Evelyn had suggested I would require justification, hard and solid and shining, without a speck of doubt or smudge of indecision. But I could weave a dozen beautiful excuses all by myself, without ever asking. Pure clarity was a lie. Only Sarika knew the truth. Sarika looked like a bruise which had healed wrong and crusted over. I searched her eyes but found no purchase, greenish-gray irises set in sagging exhaustion. Was it worth it? I asked slowly, had to wet my lips, fight to keep my voice steady, stay upright, don't hunch over and hug myself. Be a little bit scary. All the dead people. Not your friends in the cult. I mean the strangers, the homeless people, the children. The mutated children. Was that worth it? A slow, sullen blink. Sarika, please. I found my arms creeping around myself. Should have kept Rain in here, asked her to do this. Just give me something to go on here, give me dash. He was right, she slurred. Did I even need to ask? Alexander Lilburne. He was right, she repeated. I didn't used to believe in the cause. In all his high-minded bullshit. Project. Transcending human limits. Evolution. She made a weak noise between her lips, rolled her eyes. Didn't believe, before, when I participated, she said that word with every ounce of precise enunciation her slack, twitching lips could muster. Now, I believe. Us, she gestured at me with a limp flick of her fingers. Humans, we can't stand. All it'd take is one thing from out there. The it dash. She couldn't even say its name, and the name we gave it wasn't even the real one. The I. What it did, she struggled onward. Out there, where it beached itself, see could happen here. Happen to us. Her gaze wavered away, and that awful convulsive tick grasped her head and neck again, twitching her skull to the left every few seconds as she grew more agitated. He used to say used to loved metaphors, Used to say we humans like a group of sea children, in a cottage, in a dark forest. And we can be silent, and leave the fireplace cold, and keep the door locked. And is that any way to live? Didn't believe that. Being human is enough, she sighed, suddenly heavy in the shoulders, almost on the verge of tears. Just want to live quiet, never think again. But it doesn't matter how quiet we are. Because things like you are here. She stared at me, hate like hot coals. You keep its attention here. On us. All of us. Humans. You hate me for that? Why you should have gone to it. Her face twitched with anger, lips quivering, blinking like she couldn't control her eyelids. Maybe then it would leave us alone. I was hugging myself now, gave up on trying to seem the least bit intimidating. Nobody gets sacrificed, I hissed. Not me, not my sister. I'm going to win, not bargain, not appease. It's dash. She choked out a laugh, almost aspirating her own saliva. I'd do it again, because you can't win against a GG god, you selfish by dash. And it is fallible, I spoke over her. You heard the things I said in your hospital room. It can make mistakes, it's not a god. It's not evil, it's not omnipotent, it's alien and it's not a god. I'd kill more. Sacrifice 1,000,000. To shut it all out from our reality. My neat little plan had fallen at first contact, and I had rather lost control of the conversation. This was not going the way it was meant to. I forced myself to take a deep breath and close my eyes, because getting more angry at her wouldn't help. Would you sacrifice Lozzie? I asked, still irritated. Sarika went cold all over. Her eyes widened. No, you wouldn't, no, don't dash. What? I frowned at her, then felt awful, sick down in the pit of my stomach, repulsed as if I'd stepped bare-toed on a slug. Oh God, you took that as a threat. Why you dash? Sarika, listen to me. You hate me, and frankly I think you should be facing life in prison without parole. But I love Lozzie like a little sister. The whole reason we went to the Sherrowford cult's castle in the first place was to save her from her bastard of a brother. I hiccuped, appalled, grasping for an emotional handhold. Pardon my language. But you. I can't imagine why you care about her, considering how her brother treated her, but no, don't you dare suggest I would hurt her. That was a rhetorical question, I was trying to illustrate a point. What kind of monster do you think I am? Sarika trailed off. Eventually she managed a tiny shrug. Well. You asked this before, in the hospital. Don't you recall? Assumed lie. And now I've seen her. Well, it wasn't a lie. Lozzie is doing very well, thank you. I can't save her from outside, because she wants to go back, she seems to require it, biologically, but wherever I am there will always be a home for her. Why do you care, Sarika? When you were part of the deaths of 2 dozen children. Why care about her? Sarika hung her head and didn't answer for a long moment. I expected another stubborn refusal, but when she finally spoke, her voice was thick with pain. Didn't. Good kid. Deserved better. I was no psychologist, but I made my justifications in that moment. Either Sarika cared about Lozzie, or to her Lozzie was a symbol of all she couldn't admit to herself, all she would never voice, all she'd failed to do. Or she was an incredible actor and liar. Seemed unlikely. What are you trying to convince me of? She slurred. Let me rot. Let me go home and sleep. I sighed again. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm trying to convince myself. This isn't pity. And it's not forgiveness either, because forgiveness isn't mine to give. Oh, for crying out loud, Sarika, you don't deserve atonement. I huffed. Now I'd made my decision, I straightened up a bit, felt myself frowning at her, fed up with trying to wring blood from a stone. You deserve a trial, in a real court. A war crime court. But you won't ever see that, because this insane private world, the supernatural truth, it's all so much crap. I spat that word, my temper fraying, and Sarika seemed taken aback. And I won't apologize for that swear word, not that time. It's no wonder you mages resort to murder and territorialism when there's no community, no society, nothing, and so much power sloshing around. But I am not going to let my friends become monsters or warlords. We can't punish you, short of murdering you. And killing you wouldn't undo what your organization did, wouldn't bring anyone back to life. But I'm still going to use you. What? Sarika's skull resumed the compulsive sideways twitch, eyes wide before the first lapping waves of terror. I'm going to use you. I felt far less confident than I sounded. I'd harnessed anger instead of mercy, and that was not healthy. Stay very still. I don't know exactly how this will work. What? And no. Sarika slurred, lips thick, almost drooling. Hers eyes bulged, complexion turning the gray of rotten porridge. One of her crutches clattered to the floor as she scrabbled at the table in a panicked effort to gain her feet. A scream clawed up her throat, no, and no. Help. H dash. She wasn't faster than thought. Defining Sarika with hyperdimensional mathematics was child's play for a demon child spat out of hell's darkest pit, perhaps. My nose still exploded into a waterfall of crimson, and molten hot ice picks still jammed through both my eye sockets and straight into my frontal lobe. My brain twisted and screamed as if dunked in boiling water, and my guts clenched into a fist as they tried to escape my body, heavy with half-digested biscuits and chocolate eclair swimming in stomach acid. I'd used this equation once before, but this trick of perception was considerably easier when not distracted by the cacophonous noise of an alien god. Ripping Sarika from the eye's grasp had sent me over the edge and into the abyss, but the definitional equation by itself merely made me bleed from all my face holes and try to vomit up my own kidneys. A hyperdimensional equation like the heart of a star, a nuclear furnace, compact and dense with a billion overlapping layers of information and meaning. Not as complex as the eye, in the way 1 + 1 is less complex than Goldbach's conjecture, but total comprehension of a single human being was still enough to strain my not-so-human mind like a space shuttle on atmospheric re-entry. The equation defined not only Sarika's body, but everything else about her. The time when she was 14 years old and got in a hair-pulling, face-slapping match with another girl over a boy they both liked, the composition of her gut flora, and the time she last had a truly satisfying bowel movement, the exact position of every floater in her vision, the time she was 9 and stole 10 pounds from her mother's purse, and how she'd lived in fear of being caught for 3 whole weeks before a tearful confession, the day, hour, and second she'd first had sex, and how underwhelming it had felt, the blazing row with a flatmate which had ended in tears, a bad curry she'd once vomited up into a tiny pub toilet. Too much information. I had a nanosecond in which to act. Any longer risked flirting with the edge of the abyss, not to mention considerable blood loss. I selected a single kink in the equation, a smeared mess of jumbled parts that the eye had ruined forever, or I had failed to define properly when I'd ripped her free. A single knot of nerve endings that fed back into each other like a hopelessly tangled fishing line, cross-referenced with a connection between 2 neurons in her brain. I barely understood what I perceived. To write out, on paper, the part of the equation that defined only these scraps of her cellular matter, would fill more tomes than every book in Sherrowford University Library. In retrospect, what I did to Sarika was wildly irresponsible. I could have caused her a brain hemorrhage, or a convulsive fit, or fed her nerves into the meat grinder of her own immune system. But her problems were not physical problems. She was riven by kinks and rents and whole bombed-out districts of the soul, of the hyperdimensional mathematics that defined her. If it had been the other way around, Sarika's issues would be for doctors, not a shaman. I could not fix her, could not write new math of this complexity, but I could join up what already existed. And I was done before she finished screaming for help. Help. But I was the one who cried out in pain. Face screwed up, blood streaming from my nose, the deep tissue throb of a headache squeezing my skull in a vice of spiked iron. My stomach gave a great heave and I clenched up so hard that my head bounced off the kitchen table and my chair squeaked back across the tiles. Gasping for breath, throat filling with bile and blood, I lurched up and out of the chair and very almost went sprawling in a heap. I caught the edge of the sink with my useless shaking noodle arms and poured every ounce of strength I possessed into not throwing up. Not giving up the eclair, I burbled, then made a ridiculous noise like a strangled seal, a deep bubbly bleewuff as I hung over the sink, drooling bloody saliva. I was vaguely aware of the kitchen door creaking open behind me, somebody saying my name, other hurried words, a hand on my shoulder. My vision swam in and out as I watched crimson drip from my face, little red splashes all over the stainless steel. But I didn't vomit. Restraining my body's natural rejection of hyperdimensional mathematics apparently caused a great deal more bleeding than before. My eyes were gummed with bloody tears, the nosebleed wouldn't stop, and a sticky wet sensation oozed out of my ear canals, making the headache worse. As I spat and dribbled bloody mess, a familiar hand reached past me to turn the tap on. Rain. I croaked. Hey, Don't try to talk, she murmured, and her hands were already on me, holding me up so my knees didn't give out, wiping my face with a wet flannel, helping me blow my nose blood-laced mucus, lovely, and lifting a glass of cold water to my lips to force me to sip. As my vision cleared I caught Rain's expression, a lopsided smile, almost but not quite exasperated. She caught me looking and winked. Shoulda had me in here for this. "'Sfine," I croaked. "I'm fine." Held on to my food. "You did, yeah." She smiled wider, hand on the back of my neck, massaging the mathematics out of my brain. If we'd been alone I would have buried my face in her boobs to make it all go away. "Well done, I mean it, well done, Heather." Did it work? I hadn't looked at the result of my handiwork yet, and for one horrible moment I thought I might slide my eyes across the kitchen to find Sarika replaced by a pile of exploded guts. But there she was, right where I'd left her, slumped in her chair and still looking like an unhealed bruise, still slack-faced and struggling to breathe properly and mustering up a scowl at me. Behind her, the kitchen door stood wide open. Lozzie and Nicole peered through, one face an impish smile and the other politely alarmed. Evelyn stood much further back in the front room, leaning on her walking stick. Her eyes met mine and she nodded once. Approval. I wasn't sure if that was good or not. "You don't even know what I was doing," I croaked at Rain. "If you were doing it, it must have been a good idea." She winked at me, and helped me back to the chair. "Am I the only one concerned about Heather doing more super magic?" Nicole added from the doorway. "Blood magic, brain superpowers, whatever the hell you call it. You said Sarika was safe in there with you, don't make me take her back to her parents in pieces." "Safe," I croaked. "What did you do to me?" Sarika slurred. "Shut the door," I croaked. "This is private. Please." "Rain, you too." Rain considered me for a moment, indulgent but guarded behind her eyes as she stood by my chair. "You gonna do more brain math?" "No." "Done." Rain stared at me, then at the doorway, then at Sarika. Then back at me. "I will close my ears, and be your hands." "Hey, no," Nicole said. "If she's staying in the room, then so am I." "Please," I croaked. "Just leave me to dash." "What did you do to me?" Sarika hissed, face twitching, blinking out of sync. Heaths. Lozzie whispered, big smile. "Wow." "Lozzie," I moaned, "no. Please, all of you dash." "I'm not leaving while you might slide out of your chair," said Rain. "You and I need to talk about the eye," I almost shouted at her. She flinched, very hard, shrinking back in her seat as if slapped in the face. Her hands fluttered up to her chest, eyes going wide, mouth moving without sound. And nothing happened. No spasm. No closing of the throat. No curled-up pain running sharp fingers across her soul. She still shook like a leaf, and sucked down great lungfuls of air, and cried small, broken tears for half a minute. She stared at me in utter loss. "You fixed her?" Nicole asked. "No," Evelyn supplied from the front room. She understood already. "No. I can't take away actual post-traumatic stress disorder," I told Sarika in a bloody croak. "I can't fix your mind, or your body, only pieces of your soul. Even if I could, I think Evelyn would have you killed if you were fully capable again. I suspect this kind of work is the best I can do." "No." Sarika squinted, spite and suspicion heavy in struggling eyes. "No. And no, why?" I tried to ignore everyone else as much as I could. Rain's hand found the back of my neck again, squeezing and kneading. "You were with the eye for a few hours at most," I said. "My twin sister has been out there for 10 years, and I have to accept there's very little chance she's remotely human anymore. We spoke in the abyss, and I certainly wasn't human down there. She may not have a physical body, she could be so deeply integrated with the I have to tear it apart to reach her. She could be anything. I have fixed one small part of you, because when I bring her back here, I will make her whole again, human or not. And that means I need to know how. I need practice. I'm why you're your test subject. I nodded. We can do it again. Not today, not now, I'm spent, and if I go again I might lose my Eclair, and that would be really disappointing. I sniffed and wiped my nose on the back of my hand and found more blood. Rain wiped it away for me. Next I think I can do that tick, the twitch in your head. I think that's fixable, maybe. Sarika didn't know how to respond. Her face was trapped between bitter hope and deep spite. You hate me, fine, I went on, with courage born of exhaustion and pain. But you're going to help me because it's the right thing to do and you need to start doing right things. You're never going to atone, it'd take you the rest of your life. That castle is full of bodies, of murdered homeless people. They need to be buried, or marked, or given something to show they mattered. Identification, we can't do that, but we can give them a burial. And I'm going to make you walk again because you're going to hold a spade and dig some graves. The spoonful of sugar. I was honestly amazed that I managed to keep that part of the plan in place when sagging with post-brain math exhaustion. The implicit promise that I'd fix some of what was wrong with her, that perhaps one day she would walk unaided, was more than she deserved. The compromise made me faintly sick. Sarika made a soft sound with her mouth, and I couldn't tell if it was skepticism or derision. Don't want your pity, you dash. Hadn't worked. I expected panic, but I just got angry. I am not going to fix you, I almost shouted before she could spit, my justification spilling out like rotting intestines from a slit belly. I am not going to make you better. I am not going to be your friend, or your savior, or your redeemer. I don't pity you, I think you should be dead, but that wouldn't help anybody. I am not appealing to your better nature, which I'm still not sure exists. Nobody deserves the I, you said it yourself. That goes for my sister too. You'll never atone, but you can start here, with me, and with Maisie. You're going to help me, like it or not. Sarika's spite fell apart in her hands. She stared at me so hard her gaze went through me. You are the only other person I know of to escape the I said more gently. It taught me, but you were in it. You were part of it, being used, like a tool. And now I've broken whatever part of your soul was flinching at it, so we can talk about it without silly euphemisms. Sarika shrank in on herself as I spoke, shaking her head back and forth, shivering and twitching. Nicole moved forward to make sure she wasn't going to choke on her own malfunctioning muscles, but my work had been good, precise, successful. You were inside it, you must know something. BBB bits and pieces, I can't, no, I don't want to think about it. Her voice sounded like a little girl. I hardened my heart, didn't quite work. But I need you to push through the trauma yourself, I said, and hated my words. I can't fix that. I need you to tell me everything you know about it, every last scrap you gleaned from the inside, anything at all. Because if I am going to beat this thing, I must know it. With agonizing slowness, Sarika bobbed her head, almost imperceptible, once. A nod. And so we began. Jane came home 2 days later, and appended my heart. In the dead of night, I stirred in the enclosing arms of sleep. Actually Rain's arms, wrapped around me from behind, one across my body from hip to collarbone as if to anchor us together, which I should have taken as a sign to stay right where I was, woken by a lingering sound on the edge of perception. Lying still and warm and snuggled up under the bed covers with Rain pressed against my back, bleary eyes staring blind into the dark, I heard nothing except the gurgle of pipes and the creak of old beams and Rain's steady breathing. But my body knew Jeanne was close. More a feeling, not a sound. A tingling in my scalp and deep in the base of my belly and tight between my legs. Like I was something soft and vulnerable wedged beneath the safety of a rock, and my packmate had slid up alongside in the oceanic darkness, unseen but known by taste and scent. My phantom limbs were already trying to pull the covers back, to disentangle myself from Rain, to roll her gently, lovingly onto her back so I could spring free and scramble downstairs. With heart thumping, hands shaking and a trembling smile on my lips, I did wriggle free of Rain's embrace and out into the chill air, dancing on cold tiptoes through my thick, borrowed socks. She mumbled and groped for me, and I made some soft-voiced excuse I couldn't remember 2 seconds later. I probably told her the truth, I was so breathless and excited. Fumbling the nearest of Rain's jumpers over my head, big and black and comfy, stumbling into the corridor, creeping down the stairs into the front room in record time, head still groggy with sleep, phantom limbs pawing at the banister as I almost tripped over the cuffs of my pajama bottoms. I couldn't have stopped if I'd wanted to. Zheng. I hissed into the darkness, hugging myself through the thick jumper. A grunt low, muffled around a mouthful of food answered from the yawning darkness of the kitchen. The lights were off. A vague hulking shape adjusted itself in the veil of shadows. I scurried into the kitchen, my abyssal side trying to bounce and pant like a puppy, but a small voice in the back of my head set alarm bells ringing. Why did the air smell like hot iron? But there she was, a shadow on shadows, details impossible to make out against the night pouring in through the window. No moon tonight. The faintest backwash of Sherrowford's light pollution outlined Zheng's muscular frame, booted feet up on the kitchen table, head high. She held a ragged mass in both hands, and crunched her jaw through a mouthful of food before swallowing. Shaman, she purred, with relish and affection. Zheng. Zheng, oh, it is you, I knew it. I slapped for the light switch, laughing with relief. I could feel it in my belly like a dash. Lights guttered on. My laugh died with the sound a squeaky dog toy might make if squashed with a road roller. Zheng had made a most atrocious mess. A massive hunk of raw, bloody meat lay across one end of the table, still dripping, little white bones visible poking up through torn flesh. Zheng held part of the kill, gore smeared all over her hands, glazing her mouth and jaw with crimson, blood and meat scraps in her teeth as she grinned that shark's grin. For a moment I thought she'd gotten her man, and brought part of him home. Like a cat. Then I blinked and saw the gray stippled, brownish fur, and the single, forlorn hoof sticking out at one end. Perhaps 1/4 of unfortunate ungulate lay extremely dead on the kitchen table. A piece of the back end. Rump meat. Shaman, Zheng repeated, and sighed low to see me, like granite rubbing granite. She ripped another handful of raw meat off her prey and shoved it into her mouth, shredding and swallowing. You are a good sight. The Heather of 6 months ago would have screamed her head off. The Heather of 2 months ago might have been quietly horrified, if she could hold her nerve. Oh, that is going to leave such a stain, I said, and sighed at the state of the table. Evelyn will go berserk. Preem will have your head. Zheng rumbled out a chuckle, and showed me even more blood-stained teeth. Let them try. Perhaps the young one will learn an appreciation for flesh. She waved a piece of torn meat and cartilage at me. A bite, shaman? Oh, goodness, no, it's raw. It's unhygienic. It's all right for you, Miss Iron Stomach, but I'm human. I couldn't stop a smile regardless, this was so silly. Zheng. Could roast it, she purred, and worried another morsel of meat free from the chunk of carcass. Zheng extended her tongue out by an eye-watering 7 or 8 inches, and used it to snatch the meat back into her mouth. Need to get a fire going, though. Besides, deer are protected. This is poaching, at best. Zheng. Zheng purred, pleased with herself, like the cat that got the cream. Being near her felt wonderful, this giant of a woman, this demon riding a very old human corpse, looking as flushed with vitality as a Greek goddess of war and cannibalism and dubious sexual acts. She rippled beneath her clothes as she adjusted her weight in the kitchen chair, those beautifully sharp eyes watching me with the languid ease of a predator at rest. She was absolutely filthy, hair greasy and matted and still a little crusted from the weird alien snot she'd gotten covered in days ago. Her clothes, her jumper, jeans, all looked as if she'd been crawling around in a gutter. The scent of her cut through the iron blood smell, a thick spice of her sweat in the air. The abyssal side of me relaxed just to be near her. A knot of tension released, somewhere deep in the hollow space inside my chest. I laughed at myself, helpless. Funny, shaman. Yes. Yes, Zheng, what can I say? You're vastly unhygienic, you obviously haven't washed in days and I wish you would, you've made a huge mess, you're covered in blood, and I like you being here. I like it. It makes me feel well, I trailed off, blushing, still heavy with sleep, but not quite able to say what I really meant. It's mad. I'm completely mad. Same, shaman. I'm not unhygienic, thank you very much. Good cover, Heather, well done. Top notch. Idiot. Zheng wrenched another handful of meat free, then just bent forward to take a bite directly out of the dead deer, teeth sharper than knives. My stomach did a little flip, and not in a good way. I had to put a hand over my mouth and briefly avert my eyes. I wish I had a way to contact you, if you're going to stay out for so long, I said. We need to buy you a mobile phone or something. I gestured at the bloody haunch on the table, still unwilling to step closer lest I somehow get smeared with gore. Why bring this back here? Zheng blinked at me, very slowly, and didn't have to say a word as she chewed through a particularly tough knot of gristle. I blushed, considerably less slowly. We stayed in companionable silence for a long moment. Well, silence with a backing of crunching and chewing noises as Zheng worked her way through another few pounds of venison. Warmth glowed from my core. I felt like hugging myself, wrapping my arms around my own head in a paroxysm of childish glee, and compromised by putting both hands to my mouth. And I caught Rain's scent from the sleeves of her jumper. So, I said, swallowing down nerves as I ruined the moment. You didn't get him, then? Zheng stopped chewing. She gave me a look to freeze the blood. Eyes heavy-lidded and sharp as time, mouth a set line in a clenched jaw. Only overwhelming attraction and abyssal adoration stopped me from wetting myself right there on the spot. I squeaked. Then she let out a sigh like a rusty bellows. No, shaman. I did not. Oh. Oh, right. Yes. Obviously. Sorry. I'm sorry. I swallowed twice and had to manually locate my lungs. Don't be. Not you, shaman. She rolled a shrug and went back to eating. I hope you don't mind me asking another question. Zheng shook her head. Well, do you really think he's somebody from your past? Somebody who kept you enslaved? That word set my guts churning. God, if he is, I hope he expires. Zheng barked a laugh, and spoke between mouthfuls of meat. Perhaps. Perhaps not. Maybe the Yashu is correct and it is all a trick. Or maybe a very old wizard can change his face, his scent, the taste of his flesh. Or maybe we hunt a ghost. He did vanish, didn't he? Twill said he just turned invisible, or disappeared. Zheng leaned forward and ripped a final mouthful of raw meat from her kill, tilting her head up and scarfing it down like a Komodo dragon. She pushed back from the table and stood up, all 7 feet of her flexing muscles and enrolling shoulders and rotating her neck from side to side. She made claw shapes with her bloodied fingers and cracked all her knuckles. As she spoke she watched the lines on her palms. I do not fail in a hunt, shaman. Prey does not escape me. I once tracked a wizard, a real one, not these pale shadows, but a song trader at the height of his power through the southern jungles. For days of running, and he made the jungle fight me at every step. By the final moves he was dehydrated, starving, and a rot had gotten at his feet inside his sodden boots. He summoned his Oditsu Sarag. And I ate it. She grinned wide in ecstatic memory, then let the grin die a slow death. This wizard, this Welshman, his scent lingers in places he has not been. He taunts with his visage and disappears like mist before sunlight. I have found him 6 times and 6 times he turns to so much dust and echoes. He refuses battle. He is a ghost. I could barely think of anything to say to that. One day I needed to sit down with a notebook and ask Zheng for her memories. He's still in Sherrowford. Here, then Manchester. Either way I will find him and eat his heart. Then she grinned over at me, sharp teeth on display. Shaman, you revitalize me. Your health is my health. Your appetites, mine. Your body, my temple. Your heart dash, she cut off suddenly, the grin frozen for a second before flickering wider. Back to the hunt. The giant demon host turned to go, toward the utility room and the back door. You can't just leave all this mess here, I said. Zheng looked back, eyebrow raised. On the table, I mean. And you can't just drop in and leave again, not without I half raised my arms in a hopeless gesture. Oh, but you're filthy, I muttered. I can't. Shaman. I let out a huge sigh and pressed my hands to my face. I'm stalling for time because I have something difficult to ask you, I admitted all in a rush. And I'm doing that by avoiding a totally different subject which is marginally more difficult to discuss because it's embarrassing and emotional. Yes, well done, Heather, I said out loud. Excellent plan, why don't we get stuck in with both hands, really mess this up? Sometimes I'm as bad as Evie. Shaman, Zheng purred, dead flat, almost made me laugh. I did try, but it came out dry and brittle. Zheng, I need to let you know something, I said, and she turned fully back around to face me, tilted her head to one side. Why were my palms going clammy? It's only fair I let you know. You're part of this too, part of me, mine, my dash, I gave up, that one was too complex to unpick. We've decided that is, Evelyn, Rain, and I, and the others to give up on hunting this mage. Zheng grunted. A waste of your time. I sighed with awful, cringing relief. Yes, exactly. It would be a terrible waste of time and resources when we've got so much to do. I can't let another week go by while we search for a man who we might never see again, not while my sister needs me. Needs us. Me and my friends. And dash. Then I hunt, shaman. And you, I finished over the top of her. Zheng went very still. We're going to Carcosa, I rattled on, nerves screeching a warning up my spine. The experiment on Saturday morning, and then the actual trip in the afternoon. Evelyn's been so busy, warding the castle, and adding more wards to the house as well. It's a wonder you didn't set anything off, actually. I suppose you just slipped the lock on the back door, didn't you? Physical barriers and all that and dash. Shaman. Zheng stared at me, unreadable, dark eyes like knives. My bowels quivered. Will you dash? My mouth was dry as an abandoned bone. Will you come with me? To Carcosa? I would feel so much safer, so much happier, with you at my side. I'm sure Rain will protect me, but we're going somewhere that isn't human, and well I mean, I'm not asking you to call off your hunt. Or, no, okay, I sort of am. I hiccuped once, so loudly it made me wince. I'm sorry. I know, it's your right to want to kill this man, this mage, if he yes. But Zheng, I want you to help, I need you, I dash. Zheng was on me in 2 footsteps of flicker-blink motion. She moved so fast that I flinched about a foot backward, bumped into the wall, and had to clamp a hand over my mouth to smother a scream. She slammed a hand into the kitchen wall over my head, boxed me in, towered above me, our bodies inches apart. Later on, I could find no dent in the plaster beneath her bloody hand print, so Zheng couldn't possibly have used her full strength, but at the time my mind heard a slam. She vibrated with each heavy breath, blood all over her mouth and teeth, eyes boring into me. It was like the moment we'd met, all over again, but this time Zheng was not flushed with playful predation, nor the heady euphoria of sudden freedom, nor delicate gratitude toward her natural prey. Zheng dash, I squeaked. You cannot say those words to me, she rumbled, and I almost wet myself for real. Zheng lowered her face toward me. Shark's teeth lurked behind lips curling into a pained grin. She smelled of raw meat and iron blood, and hot, head-swimming spice on sun-warm skin. I cringed back into the wall as if it might swallow me up, and the only thing that kept me standing was the promises we'd made and the certainty that Zheng would not hurt me. My mind knew that, my body did not. Half of me screamed predator with all the force of a savanna ape cornered by a saber-toothed tiger, while my abyssal half writhed in something close to pleasure. I opened my mouth and out came a wordless squeak. I am denied the meat of my foes, Zheng purred. And I am denied you, little bird. What direction do I turn? Tell me. Order me. Heat radiated from her skin. She ran so hot I could feel her through both our clothes, like a banked fire inside a furnace. She dipped her head in ever closer, and my heart climbed up out of my chest and into my throat and burst like fireworks inside my head. One of her hands brushed my jawbone, and out rolled the full length of her tongue, 12 inches sliding from her mouth only to snap back through her teeth before it could lap at the stain she'd left on my cheek. Her breath touched my lips, hot and stinking of meat and spice and Zheng, and she was inching closer and closer and I wanted it and... Bath, I squeaked. Zheng stopped. Our eyes stared right into each other. Bath. You need a bath, my voice quivered through profound paralysis. And brush your teeth. It's unhygienic. I could get very ill. My inane but practical suggestion broke the spell. Zheng pulled away almost as fast as she'd pinned me, a huge face-ripping grin on her lips as she laughed and laughed and laughed, kicking her shoes off and striding out of the kitchen into the darkness of the front room. A second later, soft footsteps mounted the stairs. Shaking all over, head pounding with my own pulse, barely able to suck breath through my closing throat, I peeled myself off the wall. I had to get out of there. I needed to. Scrub Zheng's bloody fingerprints off my jawline and scurry back upstairs and slip into bed with Rain and hide and hide and hide. Zheng would go back to her hunt and we could pretend none of this had happened. So why did I stay? With shaking hands and shuddering breath, I cleaned the dear blood from my face, over the kitchen sink. Hot water sluiced through the pipes upstairs, and I tried not to think about Zheng in the shower as I wiped her crimson hand print from where she'd slapped the wall. I dug out antibacterial spray and gave it a proper once-over. I stared at the raw meat on the table and the drippings on the floor, and did my best with some kitchen towel and a little bleach solution, as the water upstairs shut off. I prayed quietly that all the soft noises had woken Rain and she'd found me missing and was going to come downstairs and take me back to bed. Zheng gave me almost 20 minutes, and I wasted all of them. By the time she padded back down the stairs with the silence of a stalking panther, I wasn't even cleaning anymore. I was just standing there in the middle of the kitchen, shivering softly, consumed with guilt, flushed inside. She'd adopted silence, perhaps hoping I'd gone, so she could slip back out into the night, and the hunt. Oh. My breath failed on her name as her rippling body stepped back into the kitchen lights. Zheng was half naked. Thank whatever twisted gods cared to grace me that we'd purchased her more than one change of clothes, because at least she'd shrugged herself into another one of those huge baggy dark jumpers she liked, but other than underwear, a pair of shorts, she was naked from the waist down, huge toned thighs of buttery smooth chocolate red exposed to my overheating brain. And she was so clean, hair fluffy and damp, smelling faintly of soap. She wasn't smiling. She stared at me for a quarter of a second, then took 3 paces and grabbed me around the middle and lifted me bodily into the air. I let out a very different kind of squeak, and Zheng planted my bottom on the edge of the kitchen table, thankfully not in the remaining blood from her gruesome meal, so she didn't have to lean down so far. Before I could protest or push her back or even fully appreciate the deep flush in her cheeks, she kissed me. Full on the mouth. Wet, hot, the taste of spice in her saliva, an electric tingle in my throat and minty toothpaste. No blood, no meat. At least she'd taken me seriously about getting sick from raw venison. Zheng's kiss was urgent and rough, which both immolated me on a pyre of my own arousal and terrified me. Her tongue, that thick foot-long tentacle, slid past my lips, and for a moment of wide-eyed horror I thought she was going to shove it down my throat, but she refrained from at least that. But I did respond. Oh, I did. On instinct. How could I not? I was painfully aware this was like kissing a fistful of knives, that behind those lips were teeth that could bite clean through my tongue, but I responded with the merest flicker of my own lips and she pushed me backward onto the table. Her knee wormed in between my legs until I was almost riding it. I shook all over, panting through my nose, tears filling my eyes, trying to speak through the kiss. And she pulled back, let me go, as the words spilled out from me. No, I blinked at her, flushed molten in the face, shaking all over like I was about to have a fit. Zheng. You said no, shaman. A purr, level and soft, though her eyes smoldered. My brain had reverted to some pre-human state. It took me a long time to locate my vocal cords. What? You said no. You were trying to say it into my mouth. Zheng pulled a smile, not a grin, but the softest smile I'd ever seen from her. I won't force you, shaman. I broke. Badly. Crying, shaking my head, stuck in a loop. Zheng kept pulling back, straight up, one hand affectionately on my head, fingers in my bedhead hair. I can't betray Rain, I babbled. No, I can't. Zheng, we can't, I want shaking my head more, blinking up at her through tears, hot and still aroused, my feet dangling off the table, wrapped in Rain's clothing, my abyssal side half entangled with the ape and purring back at Zheng, and I wanted her to kiss me again but also I didn't, and there was no way through this minefield and I was stuck. Zheng, I want you, but not like this. That was a lie, and she knew it. I knew she knew. We all knew. Everybody knew that Heather Morel was hopelessly in love or lust, at least with two different people, both of them monsters, and she was stuck. Please, I whined, arms out to Zheng. She obliged, in a very different manner to the previous way. Zheng picked me up like a crying child, one arm under my backside, the other around my back and head, as I wrapped my arms around her shoulders and my legs around her waist and clung to her. She was so warm, like she'd been lying in the sun. And my abyssal side felt, for the first time since I'd returned from the deep dark beyond reality, truly at peace. Zheng carried me into the dark. I buried my face in her shoulder and closed my eyes and went limp in her grip. It was only after a moment that I realized she was taking me upstairs, and I began to panic again. Where I had time to hiss, before Zheng opened the door to my bedroom and ducked beneath the frame. In the dark, Rain bolted upright in bed, a mere shape against the bed covers. One of her hands shot out and knocked something off her bedside table, and came around holding a knife. It's me. I hissed. It's me. What, Heather? Sleep dropped from Rain in an instant. Then, less softly, Zheng. Zheng stepped forward and dumped me onto the bed. I bounced. She laughed. This is yours, Yashu. I was shaking with guilt and burning with arousal as Rain's hands found me. I couldn't see her expression, but I could feel the confusion as she slid an arm around my back, as she smelled Zheng on me, the spice of her on my breath. I clung to Rain now, and I knew in my bones that the second Zheng left the room, I was going to jump Rain. I was going to drink her scent and her taste and shove myself at her even if I didn't want to, and I did want to. Nothing could have stopped me. Zheng turned to leave, a shadow giant in the night. To Carcosa, shaman, she purred. Friends, idiots, demons, lend me your ears, Evelyn said, and managed to instill not a speck of levity into her little joke. Let me be crystal clear. This is not a stroll in the woods, or a hike on the moors in fog and rain and cold, and it is certainly not a trip down to the local branch library. This will be the single most dangerous place any of us have ever set foot. On my lap, Lozzie let out a giggle snort, and hid her mouth behind one sleeve when Evelyn shot her a sharp frown. Speak for yourself, wizard, Jing purred. Jing ignored her, the same way she had all of Rain's colorfully creative insults over the last day and a half, small mercies. Yeah, I mean, come on. Twill squinted. We've been to some pretty gnarly places, Evie. How weird can it be? It's just a lot of books, right? Here, Preem intoned. Wonderland, I said, and everyone looked at me. I cleared my throat. Well, it's true. Evelyn rolled her eyes and gave her audience a very unimpressed glare. All right, fine, Heather and Lozzie have been to more dangerous places, but that's all. The rest of you are flirting with sheer arrogance. Zheng's mouth creased in a mocking grin, about to wind up Evelyn again, but before anybody could speak, Evelyn went blazing at Twill. And that goes triple for you, you numpty. Evelyn jabbed a finger at our blameless werewolf. You are not invincible. This, she gestured at Zheng, Brick Shithouse and Preem can perhaps afford a certain laxity, but I don't care what you've got stapled onto your brain, you're still human. You're as vulnerable as anybody else. When we're in there, you don't move unless I say, you don't speak unless I say. You touch nothing I don't put in your hands. Behave. Twill stared at Evie like she'd been slapped with a dead bird, then looked around for help. Evie, we all know the drill, Rain said, soft and easy. There is no drill, Evelyn growled. What do you want me to say? We're going to camp out. Have tea with the locals. Consult a convenient catalog to find the books. It's outside, you bunch of reprobates. We 6 reprobates, myself and Rain, Lozzie perched on my lap, Preem standing prim and neat and laden down with equipment, Twill looking rumpled and lost, and Zheng lounging against the wall with her arms folded, were all gathered around the deactivated gateway mandala in the magical workshop, as Evelyn held court. Evelyn seemed more organized and ready than I'd ever seen her for anything. She stood before the blank rectangle of bare plaster, walking stick straight and solid in one hand, dressed in coat and boots and sensible skirt and thick, warm leggings loose around the deceptively spindly ankle of her prosthetic leg, her golden blonde hair carefully tied back. Her coat pockets bulged deep with several notebooks, a series of small jars, her Scrimshawed Thighbone, and a dozen other bizarre magical tools she hadn't taken the time to explain. Waiting to her side, Preem carried the rest. She had a big sports bag slung over one shoulder, full of cereal bars, bottled water, a first aid kit, half a dozen powerful torches, hand warmer heat packs, glow sticks, duct tape, a dozen collapsible hiking sticks not for hiking, this time, and a carrier bag filled with Evelyn's secret weapon, dozens of heavy iron nuts with short lengths of torn cloth tied to them. For later. Evelyn had not forced Preem to get changed, except for the heavy, practical boots on her feet beneath her long skirt. It wasn't as if anything outside would understand the sartorial semantics of a maid outfit anyway. We were going to bring walkie-talkies as well, but Evelyn had informed us that they would not only malfunction, but may also present an informational hazard, a phrase that made me want to scream. To my right, Rain had donned her makeshift riot armor, padded motorcycle jacket over her shoulders, helmet hanging from her belt, homemade riot shield all thin metal and rubber backing leaning against the table. The long black thread of her truncheon swung lazily in one hand, but she had undoubtedly tucked away more lethal options inside her jacket. Rain's other hand slowly massaged my shoulder, which was beginning to irritate me. Even I could eventually get tired of physical contact. Barely 10 minutes had gone by in the last 36 hours without her touching me, not since I'd confessed everything. I was the only one sitting in a chair, and I'd busied my hands with rebraiding Lozzie's hair while she sat on my lap, in a vain effort to still my churning stomach. Lozzie's pastel poncho spilled out over my thighs, over her borrowed warm jumper and slim jeans. She carried little, but was as ready as any of us, though I suspected she needed it the least. Twill seemed most unready, her hands in her coat pockets, all clashing blue and lime, still a little rumpled and flushed, presumably from whatever had passed between her and Evelyn last night. Good things, I hoped, but I hadn't the spare courage to ask. I was wrapped up for an outing too, in coat and hoodie, with pepper spray in one of my pockets and warm socks on my feet and a notebook of math hidden in my coat. But all my real weapons were in my head. Mostly, I tried not to look at Zheng. If I did, she might grin at me again. At least she was clean. She stood slightly apart, leaning against the wall with heavily lidded eyes as if barely paying attention. The only person in the workshop not ready for the trip was Kimberly because she wasn't coming. She sat as far away from us as possible, on the old sofa at the back, feet tucked up and arms around her knees, trying not to chew her lips too much. It had taken half an hour of coaxing and Evelyn's all-too-patient explanations of her safety to convince her to keep rearguard vigil for us in between checking on Tenny upstairs. Soft spring rains pattered against the windows and the roof, an almost invisible drizzle against the backdrop of fat gray clouds. A damp, wet, cold Saturday. At least we weren't going outdoors. Listen to Evie, please, I spoke up. She's not exaggerating. Rain, Twill, Zheng, none of you have been outside, not even for a minute or two. This isn't like the cult's castle, this is the real thing. I gave a tiny, sighing laugh. In a way, I really don't want to do this. Thank you, Heather, Evelyn said, tight-voiced. And please do not back out now, you are essential. I know. I know. Okay, all right. Rain raised one hand in a gesture of helpless surrender, the other still kneading imaginary knots out of my upper back. How dangerous can this be? Serious question, not teasing. I need to know. You already gave us the whole spiel about the locals not being an issue if we don't step on the cracks and count to 10 or whatever. What are we looking out for otherwise? The shaman, Yashu, Zheng rumbled. Great joke, real knee-slapper, well done big zombie, great sense of humor, Rain replied, smiling razors. Rain, I whispered. Please don't. Yes, not now. Both of you shut up, Evelyn said. She caught my eyes and shrugged, and I shrugged back, helpless, and mouthed, I tried. Evelyn cleared her throat. The problem is the place itself. Every step is a risk, and we can't stay there for long. So how long is too long? Twill asked. Like, couldn't you just set me to run 4-. I don't know. Evelyn snapped. For you, as short a time as possible. Look, this isn't just about getting into a fight, or the physical dangers which are bad enough, it's about getting, Evelyn swore softly. Overwhelmed. The only time I went outside, which, by the way, was one of the most stupid mistakes I've ever made, and the fact I'm admitting that should be proof enough, was one of the most indescribable, revolting, alien sensations of my entire life, and I will remind you that I have been possessed by a demon before. I was there, what, an hour before you came for me, Heather. I nodded, though I couldn't actually recall how long Evelyn had been stuck before I'd rescued her, so many months ago now. And everything about that place, the fog, the sounds, the ground beneath me. She swallowed down a wave of revulsion. These are not places we can remain for long as human beings. It's not that bad, Lozzie said in a tiny voice. Evelyn gestured at her, scoffing. There. I rest my case. There are many places outside, perhaps not so alien. I came to Lozzie's rescue before an argument could start. Places Lozzie showed me, beautiful places. The Library of Carcosa is not one of them. Lozzie turned on my lap to pout at me. I thought you liked libraries. I gave her a sad smile. Lozzie, sweet, it was terrifying. The scale was all wrong. The inhabitants. We're not meant to be there, not in places like that. Body and soul, it's not for us. Went Twill. Alright Heather, you're giving me the creeps. Good, Evelyn grunted. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. Twill did this big performative all-body shiver. Jing chuckled at her. I think I get the picture. Right. No sticking around. Evelyn cleared her throat, her tone slipping into the reluctant teacher. The Library of Carcosa is one of the most commonly described locations outside, one of the most well-traveled spheres beyond our own, but it's still absolutely, inimically non-human. In Undecanti Orte, Paulinus speaks of getting lost in a labyrinth of his own mind, and he was a philosopher, a proper one, not exactly given to flights of fancy. There's a long passage in Tot Kugeln, where Mechthild recounts the loss of 5 companions she took with her, all in different ways, one of whom she describes as having her mind devoured morsel by the very words she dared to utter, another who was eaten by a twist of the air, God knows what the old bat meant by that, and another which was led off willingly by the librarians. Even Abdullah al-Hazrad warned against going there, and he was madder than a cesspit rat. Librarians, Rain said. Not a question. Presumably the tentacle faces, I said. I did see them, both times I went there. Why is it always bloody tentacles? Twill muttered. This is not a colonizable space, Evelyn spoke over Twill. We don't go running roughshod in there like a bunch of 19th century aristo-twats with gunpowder and Christianity for the natives. Do not touch anything. Do not speak to anything. Certainly do not read anything that I don't explicitly tell you to look at. And do not attack, harass, molest, or otherwise interact with the locals, other than in the exact ways I instruct you to do so. She jabbed the head of her walking stick at Jing. Do not get in a fight. You will put all of us, including Heather, in danger. Jing blinked very slowly. Where the shaman goes, I go. Not everywhere, rot breath, Rain said with a grin at the giant demon host. Not bad. They won't bother us, Evelyn went on, trying to ignore the verbal slap fight as I blushed into my hand, whatever they look like, however close they approach, unless we start destroying books or setting fires. Ilduara and Tieda in the broken notes are very specific about this. Displays to scatter them are fine if absolutely necessary, but you wait for my instruction. If you start pushing them around or bloody well eating them, Evelyn trailed off, shaking her head. They wake up? Twill asked. Like poking an anthill? Evelyn wet her lips, obviously uncomfortable. I don't know. I don't know what might happen. There's nothing in my books. And if you are wrong, wizard? Zheng rumbled, blinking sleepy tiger eyes. I'm not. Evelyn stared back at her. I'm not. There are multiple sources on this. Mages have been to Carcosa before, smarter and better informed than I. Besides, we have what the locals want, they will respond according to ritual, the broken notes is clear about that too. They did advance on me, that one time, with Preem, I said. They would have stopped, Evelyn said quickly, then swallowed. You weren't trying to start a fire or destroy books, they would have left you alone eventually. Eventually is eventual, Preem sing-songed. Uneventful would be preferable. We all stared at her in surprise. Evelyn shot her a sharp frown. What if you are wrong though, Evie? Twill asked. Just hear me out, yeah. What do we do? Get in a huge scrap with dozens of weird beasties? Evelyn gave her a level, unimpressed look. Why do you think you're coming? Not for your scintillating conversation or Latin literacy, that's for certain. Twill looked a little crestfallen. Evie. What's changed? Come on, we were like, she glanced around at the rest of us, equal parts confused and embarrassed and helpless. You were last night dash. Evelyn made a noise halfway between a strangled cobra and an angry badger, a sort of growling shush, going red in the face. Evie. Twill blinked at her. I put my face in my hand for the sake of these two idiots. Rain started laughing. Keep up, Twill, she said. Look, you and I, we're muscle for this trip. Our whole purpose is to deal with shit if this all goes south. Preem 2. 3 casters, she indicated Evelyn, Lozzie, and I, 1 tank, she winked at Preem. And 2 DPS. She said it exactly like that, DPS, and I had to ask her later what on earth she was talking about, and even then I didn't really understand. Plus 1 ablative meat shield, she grinned at Zheng. Perfectly balanced party. Our job is keep frosty and don't pull any aggro. Look after Evie, Twill, it's your job. Oh. Twill lit up. Alright, that makes a lot more sense. Why didn't you just say so? She asked Evelyn, who was busy rubbing the bridge of her nose and looked like she wanted to wallop both of them. Cool. We're cool, right Evie? I'll just keep my head down, unless you need something punching really hard. Evelyn sighed, trying to wipe the blush off her face. Yes, thank you. That is exactly what I need from you. And keep your mouth shut. A cheeky grin snuck onto Twill's face, a dirty joke kind of grin. Keep my mouth shut, eh? That wasn't what dash. Twill Hopton. Evelyn made her name sound like a whip crack. Twill kept her mouth shut, but the cheeky grin took a while to fade. Lozzie's eyes shone at the pair of them, biting her lips in excitement, clapping together the tips of her fingers in front of her face. Evelyn took longer than expected to compose herself. She untied the ponytail holding back her great fluffy mass of blonde hair and carefully retied it while Preem held her walking stick. Rain took the opportunity to catch my eye and knead the back of my neck. There may be things present other than the locals, Evelyn said eventually, with much less confident fire. Other things like us, searching for reference material. It's not impossible. Or others, which never left. In that case use your judgment, but whatever you do, do not damage the books. Rain, did you manage to? Not happening. Rain shrugged. Deal fell through, last thing yesterday. No boomstick for us. TCH, pity. Boomstick? I echoed, wrinkling my nose, distinctly aware that Rain hadn't left the house all day yesterday. Or used her phone. Or been apart from me for longer than it took to use the toilet. There had been no last thing yesterday. Deal? Yeah. Was trying to get us some better firepower, said Rain, all matter of fact when she spoke about something utterly bonkers. Bloke down the Nag's Head, that's the Nag's Head on Spittimer Street, not the one down the High Street or the one over Potter's Way, was gonna sell me a sawn-off shotgun. I thought my eyes would pop out of my head. Whoa. Cool, Twill whispered. I think you mean dash. Rain span her truncheon as if it was gun and blew imaginary smoke from the end of an imaginary barrel. Groovy. Take this seriously, for pity's sake, Evelyn hissed. 1 boomstick, special order, Rain was already going on. Good for doming pesky deadites and demons and other possessed bodies, if you know what I mean. She grinned at Zheng, aiming her truncheon-based imaginary firearm at Zheng's head. Present company accepted, course. Lead does nothing to me, Yashu, Zheng purred. Oh my god, Rain, will you stop? I blurted out, blushing tomato red. Lozzie put her hands to her mouth, scandalized, then to my face, trying to help, or perhaps trying to cool me off. What? Rain laughed. I'm just lightening the mood before we go over the top. Offense taken, Preem intoned, sing-song serious and totally unreadable. Rain slammed to a halt and grinned at her, all aggression forgotten. Oh, hey, not you, Preem, she said. Never you. You're a sweetheart. If you two keep this up outside, I will leave you there, Evelyn said. Stop. Yes, stop, I agreed in a whisper, praying. Rain shrugged and pulled a not-meat sort of smile, a shit-eating, I know exactly what I'm doing smile. Jing grunted softly and blinked the slow blink of a predator at rest. I couldn't decide which was worse, that Rain had attempted to procure a second illegal firearm, right here in Sherrowford, from a dodgy gentleman in a shady pub, or that I suspected the deal hadn't fallen through at all, and the real reason she'd failed to acquire said firepower was because she'd been unwilling to go out, to leave me alone in the house with Zheng for any length of time at all. 2 nights ago, in the flesh-hot aftermath of Zheng's kiss, things between Rain and I had become very weird, very quickly. I'd confessed everything within about 30 seconds of Zheng leaving our bedroom. Keeping it from Rain was unthinkable. The giant zombie had vanished back downstairs into the deeper dark, like a panther slinking back into the jungle. If Rain had stayed in bed, if she'd turned me toward her and given me the slightest opening, I would have jumped her. I would have blotted out Zheng's taste with Rain's scent and the familiar, comfortable intimacy of Rain's hands on my body, but instead, Rain asked me if I was unhurt. I fumbled some barely coherent answer which involved half trying to kiss her, missing and mashing my cheek against her chin. Then she said, "One sec, Heather," and clambered out of bed in the dark to shut the bedroom door, and I fell to pieces. Alone in my own body for all of 5 seconds as Rain's shadow crossed the room, I shivered in a way that had nothing to do with cold, then hiccuped, then blurted everything out all at once. It was one of the most horrifying things I'd ever done, and I'd committed murder, swam the ocean void beyond reality, and once written off my own twin as dead. The guilt did not lift as I unfolded my transgression, but underwent an alchemical transformation, into a sick, rotten feeling of self-destruction. Rain flicked on the lights at some point I didn't notice, soft and yellow, absorbed by the mass of bed covers and the familiar contours of our bedroom for how much longer? She listened, attentive but unresponsive, and beautiful. Perhaps it was because the kiss had left me burning, but every little detail of Rain's body seemed emphasized by the twilight bubble in the night. Her short chestnut hair, raked back and messy from sleep. The flex of her abdominal muscles. The surprisingly long lashes before those warm brown eyes. I felt tiny. To me, in that moment, she seemed as tall as Zheng. And it was only a kiss, and I didn't initiate it, and I wouldn't, and I'm so sorry, Rain, I'm so sorry. I hiccuped again. I can only ask for forgiveness, and you'd be well within your rights to just deny me that. And Rain. But Rain wasn't paying attention. An all too familiar change had rippled through her body, a tightness in her musculature, a coiled spring readiness on clearer display than ever before, as she was dressed for sleep in only a pair of small black shorts and a tight t-shirt with a massive grinning cartoon otter on the front. For a terrible moment I thought her aggression was directed at me, and the pit of my stomach turned to ice. This was it. The serial killer moment. All the love and affection of the last few months was about to come crashing down. Worse, part of me thought I deserved it. Rain's eyes touched the knife she'd left on the bedside table, then the bedroom door, then down through the floor, toward the kitchen. "Zheng kissed you?" Rain asked. "Without your permission." Oh good, Rain wasn't going to kill me in a jealous fit, she wasn't like that. Rain was going to get herself killed dueling Zheng for my honor. No. Rain, no. I reached out to restrain her, though I felt unworthy of even touching her. Not like that, she didn't force herself on me. Oh, God no. No. There was I hiccuped, had to keep going. A moment of genuine chemistry, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," and she did stop, as soon as I said no. As soon as I said no. Rain looked at me, blinked once, and brightened instantly. All the killing intent went out of her like a fire doused beneath a wave. Oh. Well, that's different then. Almost got the wrong end of the stick there. I was nodding in relief, until she smirked and added, "So what was it like?" I think my brain shut down entirely and had to reboot itself piece by piece. I just stared at her teasing, inappropriate grin. I what? What was it like? Rain ran one hand through my hair. "Carnivore makeouts, huh? Bet she tastes like a badger's arsehole." Rain, it's good that you're not going to fight her, yes, please, please do not do that, but Rain, I kissed another woman. Even if it was for a moment, I was unfaithful. It's one of the worst things I can imagine. You don't have to, you should dash. Rain's grin turned dangerous, a twinkle in her eyes. Want me to call you a bad girl and spank you over my knee? No, Rain, I was dash, I hiccuped, twice, out of control. Unfaithful. How can you, I don't deserve dash. Hey, whoa, Heather. Rain sat down next to me on the bed. She slipped one arm around my shoulders, and the other tightened in my hair. She caught my eyes and wouldn't let me go, suddenly dead serious. Whatever else you're thinking, let's get one thing real clear. You did nothing wrong. Zheng initiated. You said no. Unless you lied to me. I shook my head, eyes terrifyingly dry. But I stayed behind. In the kitchen. When I knew it might happen. But that's not really intent. Heather, you are never responsible for other people's actions. You were not unfaithful. But I wanted it. I enjoyed it. A hysterical hitch cracked my voice. How can you not be angry, Dash? Rain leaned in and kissed me. There shouldn't have been anything remarkable about Rain and I sharing a kiss. We did this multiple times every day. But it felt like coming home. Warm and soft and familiar, I melted into her taste, full of sleep heat and the scent of her body and the feel of a strong hand on the back of my head. She kissed me long and slow and deep, took control, and for a moment I thought she was going to just push me backward onto the bed and dispense with all this difficult talking. Almost panting through my nose in panic and lust and relief, I returned the kiss, hungry and flushed and vibrating in her arms. Eventually she pulled away just enough to make me lean into her before we parted. She licked her lips and winked at me. There. Claimed you back. Claimed, I echoed, and realized I'd stepped on a second libidinal landmine tonight. She purred. All mine. One of Rain's hands was already slipping beneath the hem of the borrowed jumper I'd dragged on earlier. Her warm fingers found my stomach and I gasped in surprise. My voice emerged as a strangled squeak. Why, Rain? Aren't you jealous? I am serious. Before, you said you didn't want me to do things with her. You were very specific. How can you not feel jealous? A moment ago you were ready to duel Zheng for my honor, which, again, please do not do that, please don't get hurt. Rain squeezed my flank beneath my clothes. Would that get your engine revved? I would totally duel her for your honor. Rain, stop it. I snapped at her, pushed her hand back. Stop that. Stop deflecting. How can you not be jealous? Rain's grin switched off. It didn't die slowly, didn't fade. It just went away. It was as if the soft machine of her body had come juddering to a sudden stop. She reminded me of a robot from one of those silly 1960s science fiction serials she'd shown me a while back, a robot failing to integrate a paradox. I'd witnessed a shade of this once before, back during our trip to the Say estate over Christmas, when Rain had admitted to lying to me. But that had been a mere speed bump, this was full halt. For a good 2 seconds, Rain just stopped. My fault. Oh, Rain, I'm Dash. This isn't fair, she said. Don't drive me into a corner. I'd never seen her angry with me before. It was not frightening for the reasons I'd always assumed it might be, none of the aggressive tension, the violent intent, but for an entirely new set of reasons. I had, in some way I did not yet understand, hurt her. I am sorry, was all I managed. I can be jealous, if that's what you need, Rain said, and the grin slowly worked its way back onto her face, then flickered in confusion again. But if I push too hard, are you going to leap into Zheng's arms? No. Rain. I said no to her. I'm attracted to her, yes, I won't lie, and she's important to me, but I said no. Because I love you. Rain, what is this? I don't understand. Rain swallowed once, unsmiling, then shook her head. I'm not jealous about you kissing her. I'm not hurt. I am jealous, yes, but not. She paused, a very long pause. Another all-stop on the Rain Express. I waited with my heart in my mouth. But not like that, she finished eventually, dead serious. You could even kiss her more, if you want dash. No, Rain, don't say that, I can't dash. She spoke over me. But I do not wish to be surplus to your requirements. Ever. Surplus to my requirements? I echoed. That way of speaking didn't even sound like her. Rain, what are you dash? Just tell me. No, you're not. I didn't even have to think about that one. Never. You're not. You never will be surplus, that's awful, awful. I promise you. I promise. Rain, we can ask Zheng to leave the house, if she's still here. I don't have to have her around, I understand if dash. Rain laughed softly as her habitual grin finally blossomed again, as she visibly relaxed, as she reached over and ruffled my hair. She resumed, everything oiled and smooth and running at a comfortable pace once more. Hey, no need for that. She's one of us, right? And she and I did make an oath. And we need her. And you wouldn't like it if she had to leave, would you? You said it yourself, she's important to you. But not as important as you. Rain, if she's a threat to dash. To me? Rain clucked her tongue through a grin. Naya. Not to me. You don't need to worry about that, Heather. Which turned out to be a huge lie. In the morning we woke entangled in each other's limbs and bits of sheet and a pillow wedged under the small of my back. Part of me prayed that Jen would be gone, return to her hunt, no awkward confrontation over breakfast, no terrible soap opera moments to make my life even more absurd. No such luck. Rain's aggressive territorial displays began not long after. Hey, Dawn of the Dead reject, she'd said, grinning despite her words, hanging round the doorframe of the workshop to talk to Zheng. The demon host was half asleep on the sofa in Evelyn's workshop, huge and still like a lounging tiger. Next time keep your hands to yourself, or you'll pull back a pair o' stumps. Oh my God, I hissed, face in my hands, mortified as I sat in front of a bowl of soggy cereal in the kitchen. Evelyn still groggy with sleep, squinting at the half-cleaned mess on the table after Preem had just lugged the leftover dead deer into the bins outdoors, raised a curious eyebrow. Preem was still silently bustling about with bleach and bloodied sponges. Kimberly was half out the door, but she froze at the naked aggression in Rain's smiling voice, despite not being the target. We made an oath, Yashu, Zheng purred. No fight. You will do nothing. She said it like it was a joke, laughing and easy. From anyone but Rain it would have sounded absurd. The shaman is nobody's girl, Zheng purred. I contemplated the mechanics of drowning myself in my cereal bowl. Evelyn was grumbling that they needed to take it outdoors, and Preem marched straight into the workshop. The doll demon clicked her heels on the floor, and sing-songed, no more raw meat inside the house. Little thing dash, Zheng purred. No more raw meat inside the house. You should try dash. We'll try you, Preem intoned, and Rain started laughing, and that was that. 24 hours until Carcosa, and my two best protectors had declared cold war on each other. By that evening, I was going out of my mind, and then Evelyn made it all so much weirder. I'm here to borrow your girlfriend. She'd stomped straight into our bedroom, walking stick clacking on the floorboards, then muffled by the thick rugs around our bed, as Rain and I had been in the middle of playing a video game. Well, Rain was playing the game, legs stretched out on the bed as she provided commentary and explanation for me. I was lying half across her lap, emotionally exhausted and more than a little physically sore too, well aware that if I clambered off her to watch from any other angle, I would be mercilessly encouraged back into her lap, or she'd abandon the game entirely to pay attention to me. We were trying to put off the nerves about going to Carcosa tomorrow morning, and I was trying desperately to not think about the way Rain had been acting all day. Evie. Rain raised her eyebrows and paused the game. On screen, a comically well-endowed ninja woman froze in the act of cutting a goblin in half with a giant sword. "You heard me," said Evelyn. "I'm here to borrow your girlfriend." I glanced between them. Me? Unless Rain has secretly acquired some crumpet on the side, yes you. Evelyn frowned at me, then addressed Rain again. "This may be for several hours. As long as it takes me to fall asleep." "What?" I said, blindsided. Rain's face lit up with an odd smile. "You're invoking the deal." "Evie. Never thought I'd see the day." Evelyn frowned at this too, suddenly as confused as me. "What deal? What are you blathering about?" "The deal. The deal. Come on, you gotta remember the deal. This has nothing to do with any deal, real or spurious or from your bloody dreams," Evelyn told her. "I want to borrow Heather for a few hours, yes or no?" Do I not get a say?" I asked, sitting up from Rain's lap at last, brushing hair out of my face. "I'm not property, to be passed around." "Oh, you are most deaf, not," Rain said to me. "But see, Evie and I made this deal once, a little while after we first met, right? If I ever landed myself a beautiful girlfriend, like a real 10 out of 10 stunner, and Evelyn was high and dry and really needed the company, she could ask for it, anytime, no questions. And I can't say no. Can't believe she's finally calling it in." Evelyn was giving Rain the sort of look one gives a very stupid dog that has just rolled in its own excrement. "Rain, we were idiot teenagers. I was dying. I am not gay for Heather, and if I was, I certainly wouldn't treat her as your property to give away." "Ah, but you do remember it." Rain laughed. "It's cool though, feel free, I'll be up to like midnight at this rate. I can entertain myself." Evelyn rolled her eyes and sighed. "Heather, will you come with me for a while and help me to fall asleep? I would deeply appreciate it. And before Rain says something filthy, I am not being weird with you. It's not like that. You know that." I glanced back at Rain. She patted me on the bottom and said, "Go on then." They were both waiting for me to move. I was so surprised, so utterly out of sorts from one of the most emotionally exhausting days of my life, that I just stood up, still clutching a pillow to my chest, and padded after Evelyn in my socks and pajama bottoms. I was in a sort of daze as she led me wordlessly across the corridor and into her bedroom. I hadn't visited Evelyn's bedroom in a while, and it was easy to forget how fluffy and comfy she kept her personal spaces. The plush animals and magical girl figures on her chest of drawers stared at me like a welcoming audience. Lilac and pink softened every surface, turned smooth and sleepy in the shaded light from her tall lamp. Posters and stacks of books ringed her little desk, the closed laptop quiet and dark. I felt as if I'd stepped into the burrow of a small furry animal. "Do shut the door," Evelyn muttered once I was over the threshold. She clomped around to the opposite side of her massive, overstuffed pink and lilac bed, and sat down heavily, rubbing her hip with a grimace. She hiked up her skirt around her thighs, revealing the naked black carbon fiber of her prosthetic leg, and the white plastic sleeve which kept it attached to her flesh. I said, "Shut the door, Heather," she had to repeat. "Right. Yes. Right." I did so, closing us in together. What is this about?" Evelyn rolled the white plastic sleeve off the stump of her thigh and sighed with relief, gently massaging the remains of her leg through the sock-like covering. She leaned back into the snowdrift of pillows against the headboard. "You tell me," she said. "I'm at my wit's end," I admitted, my voice breaking softly. "I can't deal with Rain. Today has been completely mad, I just can't deal with her." Yes, I noticed that part, Evelyn said, low and grumpy but not with me. That's why I called you in here. I don't actually need any help falling asleep, though I wouldn't turn down your company if you'd like to stay, if you need some respite. You can stay in here as long as you want. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable in your own home, whatever's happening between you and Rain. I sighed very heavily and very suddenly and felt like a burst balloon. I had to sit down on the bed too, opposite Evelyn. You noticed. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. One would be blind not to. Anybody would think her hands are glued to you. You two have vanished upstairs together no less than 3 times today, and that's not counting the hours I was out of the house, in class. I averted my eyes, and wished I'd had class today. 4 times, I whispered. Evelyn snorted. I'm surprised you can still walk. It's not as if I didn't want it. I screwed up my eyes in a useless effort to contain a burning blush. And the cause does not take a behavioral scientist to unravel either, Evelyn continued. I distinctly overheard Rain calling Zheng overfed bull-dyke guillotine bait, to her face, and that's extreme even for Rain. Evelyn crossed her arms and gave me the tiniest, gentlest glare she could muster. Heather, we are going to Carcosa tomorrow. Those two need to play nice, or stay home. She cleared her throat awkwardly. Look, I'm not good at this, I barely know how to begin, but you are special, to me, so I am here for you, as the saying goes. But also, what the hell is going on? I told her everything. The kiss, the aftermath, the slide of Rain's behavior since this morning. Rain hadn't left me alone all day long. She'd maintained almost constant physical contact, inviting me to snuggle in her lap, touching my neck and my sides and sliding a hand up the back of my t-shirt, accompanying me into the shower for the 5th session which I'd left out of my whispered confession to Evelyn. I didn't dislike it, not exactly. Rain's attention was a heady drug, I felt sated and pampered, and I could hardly complain about her attempts to lay firm claim to me after last night. But this was excessive, even for Rain. And then there was the territorial aggression, aimed at Zheng. Evelyn listened in tired silence, massaging her thigh above her amputated stump. And it's not I hit the heart of the matter, and had nowhere left to go. How can she say she's not jealous then act like this? It's not as if I don't understand what she's doing. And she has every right to do it, but I don't understand why. Her reaction last night was so confusing, I don't know what to do. Sometimes I feel like she's just incomprehensible to me. Evelyn spoke up at last, then paused to grimace. You snogged Zheng. That is profoundly disgusting. She let out a huge sigh and dragged a pillow across her lap to lay her hands in. But I suppose I shouldn't judge. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If I ever found any courage with Twill, I'm certain it would appear vile to any casual observer. Evie, I tutade, but didn't have any excess emotional bandwidth to tell her off for self-deprecation right then. Evelyn considered the ceiling for a long moment. I heard the muffled sounds of Lozzie's voice off in the depths of the house, of somebody else moving around in the kitchen downstairs, of beams settling in the gathering cold beyond the walls. Heather, Evelyn said eventually. You do know Rain. I managed a small smile. Do I really? Sometimes it's like she No, Heather. I mean literally. She stared at me with a teaching frown and her voice took on the same rehearsed cadence as it once had when she'd taught me about magic. There are no hidden depths to Rain, though there may be a few locked rooms full of junction boxes and loose wiring. With Rain, what you see is what you get. She wants to be your knight in shining armor. If you let her, she will be happy. I let out a huge sigh and could not conceal my disappointment. You said that once before. I really don't think it's true. Excuse me. I bristled involuntarily. Evie, what difference does that make? My mouth made a little O shape. Oh. Evie. That's not She loves you. Romantically. I used to doubt she was even capable of that, but she's proved it enough times now. That makes your situation different, and I suspect you're confusing the hell out of her. I am. Evelyn huffed a big old sigh, but aimed at herself, at her inability to express her thoughts rather than at my difficulty understanding. Rain is loyal, she said, jabbing at the pillow in her lap with her maimed hand, growing more agitated with each word. It's who she is. What she does. She finds a person worthy of her loyalty, and then she is loyal. She needs that, as an outlet or an anchor or something. I don't know exactly, I'm not a bloody psychologist. Evie, it's okay, it dash. You don't have to dash. No. She jabbed a finger at me again. No. I do. Because I am not watching you two break up. You are the best thing ever to happen to her. And I suspect the reverse is true as well. She sighed and visibly crushed down on her irritation. This isn't my place to say. It is Rain's place to say, but if it can keep your relationship healthy, screw it, I'll break the rules. She took another long moment to compose herself and, I suspected, to compose the right words in the privacy of her mind. My memories of when I first met Rain are not easy, she said eventually. For both emotional and mechanical reasons. But I have come to firmly believe, in the years since, that Rain's decision to protect me, to be my friend, to save me from my mother, was as much an act of self-redemption as it was altruism. Okay. Okay. I mean by saving me she saved herself, Evelyn huffed, then frowned sharply at me. Heather, the Rain that you and I know, that is not the Rain I met as a teenager. The very first time I met her, I was dead certain I was face to face with a serial killer, a monster, something far worse than the worst of my mother's creations. Cold blossomed in the pit of my stomach. Evie. You're not joking? Evelyn shook her head. Don't get me wrong. She's still the same person. She's always had the same boundless arrogance, the self-assurance, always been so very unstoppably Rain. But she was not stable. Stable? I couldn't imagine Rain as unstable. There was a twitchiness about her. A desperation. I assume she's told you the story, about breaking into the house to say hello to me. Her finest hour, and all that. I nodded, on the edge of my seat. Every crumb of Rain's past was like a banquet, and I was starving. Did she tell you she knifed 3 of my mother's zombies on the way in? No. Didn't think so. A teenage girl, nothing much of her, against 3 things not entirely unlike Preem. She was covered in blood by the time she found me, had a dislocated shoulder, one eye swollen shut from a bruise. Gave me the fright of my life. Evelyn lowered her voice as she spoke. All just to speak to a crippled, bent double girl who she didn't even know. She was at the end of her rope as much as I was. Rail thin, hadn't been eating, an infection in one foot, absolutely filthy. She was fearless and desperate for somebody to protect. The moment I accepted her, she put herself between me and everything in that house. And I believe it gave her purpose, and that kept her alive. Evelyn took a deep breath and blew it out slowly. I reached over to rub her shoulder, and she nodded a thanks at me, eyes damp with old memories. I guess I never thought about the reality of that, I said. Well. She did mellow, over time. After my mother. After we moved to Sherrowford. When I didn't need protecting as much anymore. I got irritated with her, yes, I made her move out. A mistake. To me, Rain will always be the filthy, blood-covered idiot who saved me when I was almost dead. And I will always, always have her back. No matter what she is, what she does. Evelyn sniffed, swallowed, and looked down. Don't tell her I said any of that, she'll be insufferable until we all die of old age. Promise, I whispered, and put my hand over one of Evelyn's. Evelyn withdrew her hand and stared at me. What I'm also trying to say is, well, unique relationship dynamics are your business, but if you are betraying her, if you cheat on her with Zheng, I will not be very happy with you. You have been my salvation, she swallowed hard, in a way Rain couldn't, and I won't know what to do if you hurt her seriously. No. No, Evie, that's the point. I said no to Zheng. I choose Rain. I do. Over and over, whatever conditions. She saved me too. Evelyn nodded. She cleared her throat. Good, she said very softly and patted my hand. Okay. Good. Right. Let's never mention that again. If you like. I smiled for her. So my guess, and my guess is a good guess, I'd put 500 quid on it if I could, is that she can't figure out what you want, because you don't know what you want. If you want Zheng to take you over the kitchen table, I think Rain would happily watch, then trade places with her for a second round afterward. Evie. I squeaked, eyes bugging out at her. You can't be serious. Evelyn shrugged. You mean both of them? I asked, boggling at her. I believe the technical term is polyamory. I looked it up. I can't do that. I can barely deal with one relationship as it is. I'd expire of dehydration. Is that even a real thing? I thought that was only in romance novels. Mostly bad ones. You're asking me for romantic advice? Me? What is this conversation if not romantic advice? Rain advice, Evelyn grunted. Look, if you want her to slap Zheng with a white glove filled with crushed gravel, she'll do that too. She will be what you need her to be, as long as you are hers to be loyal to. But you're pulling her in two different directions. She won't push Zheng out of your life, because she knows you care. But now she thinks you want her to be possessive and jealous. Oh, Evie. I felt my shoulders slump, and reached forward for support. We shared an awkward half-hug, leaning over the bed, until I pulled back. But I want to know what Rain feels, what she really feels. If she's jealous, she can be. Just naturally. Normally. Evelyn snorted one humorless puff of laughter. Nothing about Rain is normal. Don't tell me you've been pretending. My turn to laugh as well, just as empty of humor. We drifted into comfortable silence, side by side as I pulled my legs up onto Evelyn's plush nest of a bed. Part of me wanted to return to Rain and cuddle up with her, to let her know that of course I was still hers, but another part of me needed this peace and quiet, to think. Was Rain a shell into which I poured my own emotions? No, I refused to believe so. That was not what I saw in her. She was not a mere sociopathic mimic going through the motions because she'd once decided to save Evelyn, no matter how weird her value system or how she'd arrived at it. I wanted to know, I was dying to understand her completely. Why had she never told me the reality about when she'd met Evelyn? Embarrassment? Trauma? Maybe I should just trust her, and ask. You really are welcome to stay, by the way, Evelyn mumbled after a while, and I realized she'd been drifting off, half awake with her head back on the pillows. I would actually appreciate the company, haven't had any in a long time. Just I should get out of this skirt first. Get under the covers and hold my hand. If that's not too much to ask. Haven't had any in a long time. Ah. Well. Evelyn roused herself a little, rubbing her eyes. This is what Rain and I used to do. Platonic, though, you understand. Back when we first met. We shared a bed, 4 months. It helped. She took a deep breath. I haven't needed it in years, but even I'm not terribly comfortable about what we're going to do tomorrow. I considered Evelyn's face, the tired dark rings around her eyes, the sleepy flush in her cheeks, her mass of blonde hair loose over one shoulder. You don't need me here, I said. You need Twill. She frowned. Oh, 4 dash. No, I'm serious. She's got to be here tomorrow morning anyway, why not call her over to stay the night? Because I can't dash, Evelyn snapped. Then I'll call her for you. As a thank you. We're going to Carcosa tomorrow. If not tonight, when? Don't say that, Evelyn hissed, scowling. Don't say that like we're all going to die. The point is to do this without anyone dying. She folded her arms, glared at me, then down into her lap, then at her mobile phone lying on her desk next to her laptop, then back at me again. If you want to thank me, you can have a word with your pair of admirers. If Rain and Jing go at each other in the middle of the expedition, if they won't work together, Evelyn shook her head. We're doomed. I'll talk to Rain. I'll try to talk to Rain. She'll understand, for our safety if nothing else. And Jing? I swallowed, heart skipping a beat. I'm not certain I can. She's been practically ignoring me all day. I might lose myself. Maybe with Rain there. Evelyn grunted. We fell into silence again. I slowly slid my legs off the bed, eyes on Evelyn's phone. I'm going to call Twill. You don't even have to invite her into bed, just stay up for an hour or two watching anime together. What's that one with the magical girls who get married at the end? Show her that one. Maybe she'll get the message. Evelyn rolled her eyes and huffed. She couldn't look at me, only down at her lap. Carcosa tomorrow, she muttered, then, do it. So I got up, and called Twill. At least somebody would have a nice night before we visited the library beyond reality.